as a representative of Riot Games, I'd like to just congratulate BLG, Billy Gaming, on winning first stand. Obviously, our international circuit is set up to reward regions and teams that win our international competitions.
Obviously, here as the BLG representative, I'm here, to the victor goes the spoils. I'm happy to be here as the first seed. So, we get to actually enjoy the benefit of our great accomplishment to win first stand that obviously will impact our tournament chances here at MSI. Hopefully, we get something juicy. What do you got for me?
Well, as I say, we obviously reward teams and regions. So of all, we will reward your region, the LPL, for winning first stand. You will get your second seed directly into the main event of MSI, the Mid-Season Invitational, our next international tournaments. That means, don't worry, even if you make the finals but only come second, you'll be in the main event anyway. And you know what? Actually, since you directly have won anyway, we'll actually give you, specifically your team, if you qualify there, an additional reward with the seeding.
Oh, wow. Okay. Best seeding must mean that we get, a simple start, an easy start. We get to take it easy, breezy. Maybe we get to pick opponents. Maybe we get to, play one of the Brazil teams, maybe the LCP team, something simple, right?
Yeah, of course. What we will do is we will afford you, as the #1 seed of the main event, an easy team. We will just give you a playing team, by definition, one of the weakest teams in the event because they didn't even qualify directly as a #1 seed.
All right. Well, who is it then? Who do we get?
You've actually gotten the #2 seed from the LCK. It's T1, 4/5 of the reigning world champions.
Wait. I mean, we have different teams in the tournament, like FURIA, Team Secret Wales, How about one of those guys? Can't you change things up?
No. You have to understand that would be unfair because those are first seed teams. We can't know that there's actually differences in regional strength, despite what I actually said at the beginning of this whole thing about winning and regions and that project. So what we have to do is we have to actually assume, it'd only be in good faith to do so, that actually Team Secret Wales could be better than T1 because you have to understand Team Secret Wales is #1 seed, whereas T1, they weren't even the #1 seed in Korea. Therefore, logically, you have gotten an easier opponent than Team Secret Wales. Don't be silly. We could never know otherwise. There you go. That's it. That's it.
Understandable. #1 is better than #2, regardless of the context. It's like, #1 is better than 2. It is what it is.
Yeah, there we go. We didn't actually know if there was a last line there, so whatever. You ad-libbed it. It's all good. But it's where you get the premise, guys. Because I actually think what we'll do is we'll start here and work our way back. Which I think it'll be a unique discussion. Because one thing, by the way, if people don't know about me, is I actually have a pet peeve about how content is done around events, which is content is done in the most short-sighted manner possible. So I'll give you an example. I know in League it doesn't happen because obviously the playing section is quite small, but I can tell you in Counter-Strike, we have one of the biggest problems ever when people do previews or do like the first week, which is they only look at the opening matches or they look at like the beginning of the tournament. Whereas if you actually want a preview for a tournament, the #1 thing you want to discuss is who's going to win the tournament and who's going to match up deep in it and what would it mean. And the rest of it actually ages very poorly because by the time the tournament ends, who gives a fuck how it began? So obviously this episode will cover in terms of the matches, the play-ins, but let's be real, within literally a few days, none of us are really going to give a fuck about the play-ins. And spoiler, we only really needed T1 to get out anyway, and they did. So even the whole drama of Liquid and KC, that's fun for like the last few days, and it can be sort of like, let's say, an appetizer for the main event, but it's not really going to be that significant. And spoiler, neither team got to the main event. It's not, you only really get the bragging rights. It's that bullshit moral victories. You never won anything, bro. There's no special prize money you won. You didn't get in the main event. So I think actually I want to start with this detail, which is, I think MSI as a tournament, is actually one of the best in esports. Like I told people as soon as I saw that format, like, wait a minute, the main event itself, because remember, they even did what I think is actually an example of, unlike what Riot normally does, of like breaching the premise to make the actual real world result better. So I'll give you a quick side angle on this, right? When I was a boy, Yamato, many aeons ago, there was a competition. It wasn't called the UEFA Champions League. That only started in the 90s. It actually used to be called the European Cup. And the whole point, right, the way of why they rebranded to the Champions League is because the European Cup was for the champion of each region. And the whole premise was you only got to play in what was then rebranded the Champions League if you won your league. Well, what that meant, I'll give you an example, is I was a Liverpool fan. Right, here's what's mad. I've seen Liverpool win the Champions League twice in my lifetime. But do you know that the 2 times they won, they weren't the champion of the Premier League? And so in the old system of the Champions League and the European Cup, they never would have even been able to qualify, bro. In fact, I used to sit for the whole 90s and watch basically Manchester United and the odds like Arsenal or someone just playing that competition and go, wish I could see my team playing that. But I get it. We're not the champions. Now, the point I'm making here is this. As has been pointed out by people actually like legendary footballers like Ruud Huller, in theory, that is a better competition. If you can only get access to the Champions League by being the champion, it does in theory make it more prestigious to win it. It's just that anyone who's ever watched the competition knows the competition in real, like reality, even though the concept sounds amazing and pure, it's actually better if you make it a little bit impure and let like 2 or 3 teams from the top leagues in. And then if someone has like an inspired run like Liverpool in 2005, etc., that can be kind of cool as well, right? That way it's not just like one, because also a bit like MSI, you can see why they did this. The real problem with having one champion from each region is I can tell you that's why you used to have some crazy ones that were won back in the day by like, who the fuck? Like Red Star Belgrade or something won one time. Because in reality, you can only have one Italian team. So if Italy's the best league, you can still only have one. So you wouldn't really go to beat one or have someone else beat one. You only get one from the Premier League. You only get one from German Bundesliga or whatever. So anyway, the point is, I get why they did this approach when they made it like multiple teams for MSI. I think that part also makes it dope. Then it's got the double elim. The one problem you have, and this is going to be a problem for a long time in League of Legends, as the skip pointed out, is seeding in League is not only fucked, it might be fucked in a way I've never seen in any other game, bro. Because here's what's weird. We have a system in Counter-Strike, or you could even look at the World Cup. Oh, yeah, they absolutely do a whole representation thing in those competitions. Like in the World Cup, people will complain. Like, wait a minute, surely Italy's better than like certain random like Asian or African countries. Probably true, right? But at least Europe gets loads of slots, though. It's not like Europe gets like 3 slots and Asia gets 3 slots, which is sort of what League does. League thinks it's doing that by giving 1 extra slot to, say, LCK or 1 to the winner of first match. But the point that they miss is like the joke says in the intro. Here's the difference. When you do a tournament, even if you have slots for smaller regions, you don't really treat like Japan or Korea like they're better than fucking like, you know, Brazil, like the second best South American team, do you? Like, that's what League does, unfortunately. So I want to start here because I feel like in this episode, we're going to go back, obviously, and talk about Play-Ins, but then we're going to look forward to the main event. And obviously, this seeding issue isn't just a gag at the beginning. It has massive implications for the MSI itself. Like, I've got to say, right out the gate, this is why the gag was like that. If you're BLG, you could actually make the case, Yamato, you got the worst possible first round seeding in light of the fact that, like, even though HLE is technically the #1 seed from LCK, no one knows how that roster will perform internationally. Whereas, as I said, this is 4/5 of the defending world champions of League of Legends, and the team that the core, at least of it, is just dynamite every time they get international competitions. Like, even though they haven't won MSI in donkey's years with these players, you still expect them to be really clutch and hard to beat. And you could, by the way, you could even add in, even though this is completely not Riot's fault, there's even a completely ironic aspect to the fact that it should actually make it worse, Yamato, logically, for the LCK's #2 seed to be in Play-Ins, because you have to show everything in the draft. But it doesn't everyone say the opposite narrative about T1? Like, they get stronger as the patch goes on, and the more they get. So if anything, I don't even know if that helps you, because the joke might be if you play them in the upper bracket final, maybe they've already started playing a different meta, and they already got the shit from the Play-Ins out the way. So I want to start there. What do you think about this detail? Because as I say, if you are setting it up, and this is how Riot does it, as if BLG gets a reward, they get to play the Play-In team. If you said that, by the way, with no context of who the teams are in League, that sounds like that is what the #1 seed should get. Remember, #1 seed should, in theory, get the worst team at the beginning of the playoffs, right? The problem here being that in a Riot world, when you take out the abstract, you look at like specifically who it is, it ends up being like, well, I think is most people one of the favourites for the tournament. So what do you think about this seeding issue where BLG starts and they're playing T1 right out the gate?
It's just awful, because it's just you come from a position where the solutions are very simple, right? Like, you could have deployed the simple solution that, let's say, as a reward, you get to choose your first round opponent. BLG
That's a
and
good
G2
one.
get to
Yeah,
choose.
yeah.
They are on either side of the bracket. They get to choose, and then suddenly,
yeah.
or already from the get-go, you are settled. I think also the weight of historical implication needs to be just heavier, because I wouldn't mind at all if we had a situation where, let's say, you have seed 1 and seed 1 from LTA, LCS, and of course EU, Korea, and China already auto-qualified into the tournament, and then you have seed 2 from Korea and China also auto-qualified, and then the last 2 spots is something that you fight over. But another issue, that has arisen due to the LTA merger being such a mistake, in the sense that they, of course, merged together, and then they wanted to share slots, and then they went back on that, and they didn't want to put NA in a position where they shared slots, because during this entire LTA process, the main things that were suffering was, of course, the teams, because there was a period in last year where the teams that were sent to MSI, we only had one. If everyone remembers the whole conversation about how it was sad that C9 didn't go, obviously they got smoked at EWC, and they didn't look the same in the summer playoffs, but it was that 5-game series where Flacos and C9 went all the way, and it was like, oh, why on earth don't we send another team? And this was, of course, the story of that MSI when you look at the LTA. But then in the consequence, obviously walking back on that decision, where a lot of other regions like the LCP was a collective of regions, they wanted to include CBLOL and to, of course, harvest the good parts, which was the viewership and the hype and the passion behind it, and then to, of course, use that to revive like North America, which in a sense just had more money flowing in due to sponsorships at the time. So this was like a synergy that they had in mind. But in the aftermath, they had to give something back, of course, to CBLOL, and understandably so. I don't blame them. But it creates a scenario now where you have this issue where MSI needs to expand as a tournament for this to make sense, because the number is just uneven. Like the number is very, very awkward in terms of, the teams that need to be auto-seeded to the tournament if you want to treat each region at their number one seed as a team that goes into the tournament. I think from CBLOL's perspective, I think they deserve to get recognition and to have international play. But in terms of what MSI was in the past, it was just seed 1 and seed 2, and then the play-in team that made it. And the LCP and CBLOL had to just fight their way through in order to prove a point. I think at this point, if you want to continue, CBLOL and LCP and have them in that position, you have to expand what MSI is, because you can't create a circumstance where you don't have seed 1 and 2 from LCK and LPL just not starting in the main tournament, regardless of what happens at first stand. Because it's like, it was the same last year. It's like Top Esports, in what world their underperformance at that first stand, how is that going to bring you any indication of what is going to happen at, of course, MSI that same year? There's very little implications, and it doesn't matter at all. I think the main thing is you just have to accept what history is and just expand what the tournament is, because I wouldn't mind at all to just watch an extended version of play-ins where we actually get to see if FURIA is better than Team Liquid and Team Liquid gets to play KC. Like, these are the aspects that are fun, because we were all just sitting there and waiting for T1 to make it through. Because as you said, it's like Team Liquid and KC fighting against each other. Like, sure, in the moment it's fun, EU fans, NA fans, they have a moment, but it's just noise when it comes to what that tournament actually is. And I think that you need to put a little bit more emphasis, because the main issue with all of this is that it really, really, really puts this dark shadow over any placement that isn't like top 2 in a tournament. Being 7th or being 6th or 5th or 4th is completely meaningless, because it could be from a very fraudulent bracket. And I think that there needs to be meaning behind it. I think there needs to be importance behind it. And I do think that you want to create a system where a team that is 7th place, you can, with good, arguments, say that they are actually the 7th best. But you're going to miss, because now Team Liquid could be better than LYON at this tournament. They could be better than G2 at this tournament, but we will never find out because of how it is structured. So there's a lot of easy things that can be done to improve this, because obviously this is completely irrational.
Yeah, I've got a few angles on this. So one of the problems is the actual knock-on effect of this result. This is another thing people are missing. It isn't just BLG or T1 that gets fucked on this, right? What's worst is it actually affects the entire bracket. So first of all, as a knock-on effect, because BLG plays T1, it just so happens the rest of the seeding ends up with LYON playing FURIA, which is like, if you look at all those first-round matches, that is a crazy sore thumb sticking out, mate. Like, that looks absurd. Like, mate, LYON versus FURIA looks like it itself could be a play-in game, but it's the first round of the match. Meanwhile, BLG versus T1, let's be real, that could be the final of the tournament. Like, That even has been a Worlds final, for fuck's sake, with most of these players. So that already is a problem, because not only have you made BLG's route harder, but then you've made like LYON and FURIA have a bizarrely easy route where one of them is guaranteed to not come last place now. Then I'll give you another one that's even weirder. People I saw did pick up on this on Reddit, believe it or not, I think because they were doing their pick'em bracket. Because of this weird matchup where you're going to guarantee one of BLG and T1 is in the lower bracket first round, right? You have to understand one thing about double elim that a lot of fans still miss, which is double elim has this detail because you don't in theory want teams to constantly run into each other by default. If like for example, here's the obvious problem in a double elim if you don't do what's called bracket flipping, is if I play you like BLG and T1 does, right, and I beat you, but then in my next match I lose, it'd be silly if I then meet you immediately in the second round of the lower bracket, because I had just played you in the upper bracket. So what you do instead is the first round of the double elim, you just drop down to the one below you in the double elim, and then the next round it flips, so you go on the opposite side, then it goes back and it alternates until you get to the final, basically. Now the detail people have noticed already is this is also where the BLGT1 seeding fucks the tournament, because did you know, if, as you say, the one problem is this, right? In single elim, Yamato, I always say this, the only thing single elim finds in theory is who the number one team is. Double elim, as you say, pretty much guarantees you're going to get number one and number two, because you have the lower bracket for the other team to fix things or the other one to come back, etc. The problem then becomes you're still not getting anywhere close to knowing is the team that finished third or fourth actually third or fourth, because the rest of the bracket. Here's where this is fucked up, because think about at this tournament, right? If you were a team like G2, this is the one I'm going to use for the example. It's the one that actually applies in this case. As First Stand showed, G2's best case scenario probably isn't to win or make the final. It's probably to be third, right? If they could come third, they've done it in the past, that would actually be like epic, right? To come that sort of a placing. Here's the problem. Essentially, people figure this out, it's correct. Because of how the bracket flip will work with the BLG T1 loser, G2 would actually have a better chance to finish like fourth or third or something if they just lose their opening match to TES. Because if you lose to TES, you'll drop to the low bracket. Then in the next round, you won't play the one who lost the BLG T1. If instead you beat TES, your reward is if you now lose to HLE, which you're very likely to, you will just play the loser of BLG T1 in like the fucking lower bracket second round. So you'll actually end up coming like 5th to 6th in the tournament, but you'll have already played TES and Life into BLG or T1. That's absurd. Again, by the way, what's the prize for G2 now? Like, you're actually even here's the thing also, by the way, we're being purely hypothetical. It would actually be insanity to intentionally lose to TES and don't. I mean, for a start off, by the way, here's the reason why you wouldn't do it. For all you know, Hanwha Life magically has the craziest loss ever to Team Secrets, and now the whole bracket's fucked. Like, you have to notice that assumption does carry that every other result will go as it should, and that so instead you can't ever do that in a tournament. It's the same as this thing at the World Cup where people were saying you could lose and get easier pap. Yeah, but you can't know that every other team will win their game. You have to usually in competitions, unless it's completely rigged and you definitely know your bracket, you just do your best and then you let the rest happen. And then if you get a lucky draw, you get a lucky draw. So no one's actually going to do this, but it is mad to think that you could essentially place higher in the tournament or have an easier chance to by intentionally losing a match that otherwise you would be potentially winnable. So that's also a fucked up thing. So here's my proposed solution. Sadly, I don't think this will ever be implemented, Yamato, because what the skit at the beginning really poked fun at wasn't about T1. It was about how Riot views the different regions. And so even though they're willing to give you small concessions like more teams from LCK or LPL get to go than the West, or winner of international tournament gets an extra slot. By the way, I even think that one's fairly clever and elegant by Riot, because what they did there, it's a bit like Yamato when they said, in the LEC versus, there will be two teams, because at the time they said that, remember, it will be the team that did the best in the EMEA circuit and the winners of summer. And as everyone quickly figured out, that's not really an abstract rule. Like, hey, it'll just be these teams. They were just saying it'll definitely be Los Ratones, because that was the whole plan, obviously. Yeah. And what they did there was just ensure it, because either they were going to win summer, they didn't in the end, or they were already the best team in the circuit. So all you did. So essentially, I think actually Riot already has tried to do their version of not saying they're wrong with how the regions work and that the regions are equal strength. But the way they've hacked it is they've gone, but whoever wins first stand in MSI gets a bonus. Because you know that's going to be the LCK and the LPL. That's just a clever way to not say LPL and LCK are better, but just give them the thing you want to give them anyway. Another slot, better seeding. So my issue here is this, right? I actually think Riot can only fix the seeding if they actually breach this wall, Yamato. What they have to actually acknowledge, and I know it's harsh, but I think I've got a fair way to do this, is this. They have to actually acknowledge that both LCK and LPL, historically, and it looks like probably forever, will always be overall the better regions with the better teams and will yield the potential winners of the tournament. Now, here's where I'm not being unfair, though. We're not going to do it how Thorin would. I've told people before, I'm even worse than Dom, bro. If I designed Worlds, it would be like 6 LPL teams, 6 LCK, 1, 2 from the West. I'd have the play-in would basically be the rest of the tournament to get into this. I'd have the West and all the managers playing against each other to get into the last spots in the minutes. So they can still get there, but it's just unlikely. I've got a compromise between the two positions, which is this. Just give the LCK and LPL teams the spots in the main event. Do the same for Worlds. But if you are the teams like LEC and LCS, you're the ones where your placing in the previous international gets you the spot. So G2, by the way, would now have won themselves the spot, or the highest placing one would. Maybe it's highest between LCS and LEC gets the extra spot. They get the direct extra seed, or they get a second seed, goes it. Something like that, so you've still got a competition element. Because the reason I'm saying that is, you will every now and then get a year like an MSI with 2019. Well, if G2 wins that, you want to give EU or G2 something extra in Worlds, don't you? But on a year where that doesn't happen, surely the most obvious default position is LPL and LCK probably is better. So I think I've come to a fair conclusion. Look, I'm not naive enough to think it'll be implemented, but I do think we need something like that. Because here's the thing, I don't mind Play-Ins, Yamato. I actually think Play-Ins is fine. I'm not really a big Play-In fan, so I only watch the matches for this show. I wouldn't tune in otherwise. I would just wait and see who got the end or see if there was an epic game. So if we're going to have Play-Ins anyway, can't we just use Play-Ins to sort this out? Because again, if you had some sort of plane, I'll give you this is where I'll put my money where my mouth is. If you'd have had a plane that featured LYON, Team Liquid, KC, FURIA, Team Secret Wales, and then at the end of it, FURIA wins it, by the way, not impossible. If they win it, then I won't complain if they get a half-decent seed or they get to be in the main event. But the problem is, as I watch now, like I joked about when I wrote the skit, it's not even the fucking LYON one. It's not even how bad the BLGT one is. It's the idea that if you're Team Secret Wales and FURIA, Riot has to pretend you're better than T1. Riot has to pretend it's T1 that needs to prove they're better than you. Well, I'm sorry, in that scenario, in 99% of scenarios, you're just going to be wrong if you're Riot. Even though I get that's why I made the point about the European Championship. I get why it's an idealized concept. It's support. Remember, this competition began as the European Cup. It began as the champion of each region, just comes together. We see who's better. Because we're not doing that anymore, we are surely doing an entertainment project. And we do want this product to have like awesome fucking matches and all the best teams there. So I feel like we got to find a compromise. Do you have any other solutions? Do you have any other angles on it?
I'm pretty sure, because I agree with you that 4 slots should already be closed off for LPL, LCK, and then 2 slots can be for the best number 1 seed performers from other regions, and then 2 slots for play-ins. I think that's a fair compromise. I think the easy way to create justification for it is just by looking at history and looking where the second seed placed for these regions. And if the second seed is outperforming the number 1 seed of the other regions, then you already have very, very easy legitimacy to point to. Because I'm pretty certain, we've had every MSI, we have had some situations, like we saw G2 upset top esports, but other than that, we've had a pretty consistent, top 4 being like the LPL teams and the LCK teams. It's very, very consistent. We had BLG beating FlyQuest last year, right? Even in their weakest form. And then you had the AL making a run for it. It's been consistently those teams be in the top 4, and I think that you can point to you can easily create a tangible number as to how you create your seeding system. And I understand that there is going to be differences because it's not as easy to do it as, for example, CS, because the circuit is very different. And coming into every tournament, you can reference back the same thing. And there's no big qualification process out of a region for teams to compete. But I do think that you have enough to go off of to know who the usual suspects are going to be in terms of who's going to make a deeper run into the tournaments. And if upsets are going to happen, sure, that's cool. But I think it just really, really removes from the legitimacy of your tournament. And it was the same. It's I made a short complaining about this specifically about the MSI format, and then it's you always have that one person. It's why does it matter who BLG and T2 is going to face?
Yeah.
if they want to make it far, they need to beat anyone. It's like, yeah, but it's like, you know, I think there's an importance to who makes third place, fourth place, fifth place. There's an importance to that. Like it's a very, very important aspect of history, and it's the same as like, are we going to discredit WE's run because they didn't win the LPL? It's like, no, they made third with so much, like they had so much less than everybody else, and that achievement can be greater than winning the LPL for, of course, a team like BUG, because they have the most expensive players and the most big name players in the whole region. That conversation is important to me, and I wish it was important to everybody else too, you know, in community discourse, because I do think those things as achievements are things to be proud of and things to look for, because in the end, projection and beating that projection, how that looks is very different for everybody.
And as I say, I'm not doing it as like a hardcore purist myself. I'm willing to do a compromise that if a team from a region that traditionally wouldn't be as good somehow overperforms, then you allow a path for them to be in the event and have this spot. I mean, I'll give you an example also of where the seeding immediately looks skewed as well, right? When you see Team Secret Wales is waiting there ahead of T1, well, you have to remember last year, that wouldn't have been as crazy because that would have been CF4. And CF4 had Junji and it had Honkyu. And so that was a bizarre, a bit like Flash Wolves, generational team from that region, where actually that can exceed the historical expectations of the region. But the problem becomes, one, when certain players leave or that team becomes semi-defunct, it no longer makes sense to grant that anymore. You can't, again, just because it's possible, theoretically, that a European or a Taiwanese team, for example, could be as good or better than the LPL, it just isn't in 99% of cases, or almost pretty sweet. If you were actually a purist like me, you'd almost never be wrong. I'm just allowing a world where you can actually be wrong occasionally. It can still work. Like they can still be in the event. And like I say, if you're going to run play-ins, and they've done this for Worlds for many, many years, why is that a problem? Like, I'm not even dissing these teams by putting them in the play-in. If anything, like I said earlier, aren't I actually proving my own prior assumptions about those regions? So I'll give you an example. That's why I gave the FURIA example, or Team Secret Wales, because I myself, in the same way as I think that obviously LYON isn't on the level of fucking LPL and LCK, well, at the same time, I would have a European chauvinism of like, well, there's no way that like KC could lose to Deep Cross Gaming and to FURIA and to Team, but maybe they would in a play-in. Let's actually have the matches happen and let's see. Like there was a saying someone said one time of like, the whole point is we can debate, you know, who wins a fight or a game, but there's a reason why we play the games. So we actually just, let's see what happens in reality. Let's see, even if it's the craziest outcome, what happens. So yeah, I think we've done a pretty good discussion on that, because I also agree with you. If someone looks back in history on a Gamepedia and they see like G2 third place or fourth, they're supposed to, in their brain, if they know that that tournament had like 2 LCK and 2 LPL, go, holy shit, they must have beaten like an LPL team, an LCK team, maybe they had like a sick run. If instead they find out like, oh, they just had some scuffed bracket where they're the ones who benefited from some like stupid seeding elsewhere, and then the way that double limb flip worked, then that's kind of whack, isn't it? Like the context just brings you down off the whole hype of the narrative. So I'm with you on that one. Anyway, here's one thing that's interesting, which is you're probably thinking, if you watch some of these shows, because you're probably assuming, if you're a fan, that we were going to start with discussion about the play-ins and be all about KC failing and Liquid's overperformance and T1 beating everyone anyway. But actually, we started where I felt like we should start, with what was interesting to me, because one of the beauties of making content, by the way, is you should talk about what you know and what interests you. It's going to be what you're passionate about. It's going to be what sparks your interest. It's going to be something that you can keep conversation going with and draw people into what you're interested in, etc. So if you want to express your opinion and create content yourself, well, the beauty is one of our new sponsors can help you. It is called ZenAI, and it will allow you to launch essentially your own sportscast, esportscast, whatever it might be, whatever your enthusiast hobby is. These are all the tools, the AI assistants, to create something like that yourself. And it's just really low effort on your part, and it'll take care of a whole bunch of the stuff, and you'll have something that exists in the world that could be like essentially your own show, your own discussion about whatever it might be. Because one of the things is they're all about what's called vibe casting. So in this case, we don't need you to be an expert about all the tech of how to do shows. You don't have to know how to put it all together. There's so many aspects. You just have to have your opinion and the concept, and then they can do all the rest for you, and you can very quickly have something that's out there in the world, and it can be for your circle. Maybe it can even grow bigger. Maybe you can become a content creator in your own right, so you don't need any production skills yourself. And also, by the way, they will pay new vibecasters, their term, to create your first vibecast. If you create a sportscast about your favorite team, you can get paid to do it. And you can do these vibecasts, by the way, live as the game begins, or you can record it afterwards if you want to analyze the game. Pick out someone you want to be on a show with you, your co-host, your Yamato canon in this case. So if you know someone in your life who is a football fan, an NBA lover, an MMA enthusiast, an esports fan, maybe they're a league fan, maybe they're an LCS fan, an LEC fan, whatever it might be, you bring someone along with you. They have all the tech to help you do it. It's portable. You can just do it on your phone. Basically, your phone becomes your studio. They can help you with all the audio levels, all that sort of stuff. That, again, by the way, usually you need a producer. You need people who can do things in post for you. You need to be able to check these things. That's all taken care of you. This is your AI producer. It'll handle the edit. It'll do audio cleanup. It'll help you create share-ready clips that you can just put out on the social media, which is actually one of the most active ways I've found to discover new podcasts or to find out what's going on and to find out the hot takes that are on shows. So by collaborating with the AI producer, it can make audio and video edits just by you saying in plain English that you want the edits, by the way. It's really easy. You just hit record, you have your convo, you will have a draft of it ready already, your sportscast, and then you can basically, if you're doing it live during the game, by the time the game's even ended, you can just have it out there in the world. You can be the first out there. I can tell you, by the way, in the world of content, being the first to put stuff out there is a big deal, actually. If you delay even a day or two, sometimes everyone else has already sort of cannibalized the conversation. So think of it this way. If humans are the talent, then the AI infrastructure is the infrastructure, isn't it? That's the part that's going to build around and be the thing that will allow you to get your words out there. So you need to bring your vibe, who you are, your take, but the production, that can be taken care of by AI. So ZenAI is currently in invite-only beta. Join the waitlist today for a chance at early access. Go to zen.ai to sign up or head to our show notes for a direct link. Okay, shout out to ZenAI. Let me know anyone if they actually make their own show and what your angle might be. If you think this show was bad, make your own. There you go. It's actually not, that's not even a ridiculous statement. All you have to have is a mouth and then the ability to use a phone. And then if you go and sign up, you can potentially do it. Right, let's get into it then, Yamato. So we will now go back like fucking Tenet and just talk about the play-in. So obviously, I think we just start with the teams and do them by team, mate, and then we'll do a breakdown of the main event. So the obvious place to start with is just the T1 angle, right? They were coming in, as suggested in the last, hour of the show, as a ridiculous favourite, bro. Like, there's some people I think have T1 as the favourite for all of MSI. So the idea they weren't going to get through the play-in is nuts. And here's where I want to start, Yamato. I actually do think one of the most interesting things about this particular, last few months of League of Legends is, I think it's actually, even though last year I thought in Fearless, when people were adjusting to Fearless, there was a lot of wacky drafting that sometimes did or didn't matter. Like I told you, my conclusion last year was almost some old school OGN blind pick shit. I always thought in game 5, you shouldn't try and do too hardcore composition, because it's very hard to get the comp you want in game 5. Usually the champions have already been taken out that you practice. So to me, I always thought in game 5, a bit like old OGN blind pick, I would usually just default to having whatever champion you like as a player and think you can pilot, and then we'll just figure it out. So as you saw, that might be an Aurora for Chovy or something like that. The point is, you don't want to end up in the world where, Tarzan stuck on Sejuani or something like that. It's what's he going to do there? If the game doesn't go the way we want with our comp, we're fucked. So normally, I actually do think a lot of these people doing these analyses of drafting strength, it seems quite accurate. If you look in all the regions, the teams that draft the best, basically, people don't know, it's literally G2, Hanwha Live, BLG. These are the best teams in their regions. They're not only strong, but they're drafting great. Here's what I want to say at the outset. I think actually this play-in really showed how far ahead T1 is of every other playing team. Because, bro, I don't even think they were doing some goated drafting. I even think some of those games genuinely look like they were trying to do the old school, I'm going to draft dog shit and just style on you, because, mate, they couldn't lose a game. It didn't matter. It didn't matter how many OP champs they gave away. They could just give the Western player his imperfect signature champ and they still beat you. They could even be behind in the game. In a weird way, this play-in was one of the craziest black pills for the West I've ever seen, Migs. It's at this point in time, they'd have to just actually let you hit the Nexus. There's nothing more they could do. I don't even think it didn't even look like they gave a fuck about these. What did you think of T1's running that, sir? I thought this was like a crazy style. It was like holding your little brother's head back because you just slap him and he can't even reach you. You know what I mean?
I feel like T1, their whole run, I would describe it as well-placed and intentional arrogance and ego.
There you go.
Because they played in a way as if they didn't conceive the idea of losing. Because in those games they got away with things where I think sprinkled throughout there was so many moments where you just got caught. Faker got caught there, Doran got caught there, Pace got caught there, everyone got caught at some point. There were like long segments where they would just give up kills and give up gold, and anything tied to items or the relationship to like the importance of summoner spells. We have that moment in time where like Code JJ gets this like massive 4-man pulverize, which really good execution from Code JJ with the hex flash timing and sending it. But they were walking into that fight with no summoner spells, no vision at all, just thinking, you know what, we're just gonna outplay it. And for the majority of fights, that was also true. So can you really fault them? I think there was so many fights that the conditions weren't optimal, and if the teams were even, they would be in losing positions. But the amount of magic that, whether it's an owner steal or a perfectly placed Zinzao ult or just pays, basically just his wrists were completely on fire with how he played Lucian. Or like the perfectly placed Milio Qs and the ult timers or the Mikhails from Keria and the Battles. It's like everything. You can take 10 minutes to break down every fight that T1 does based on execution alone. But that was like the big thing. It's like any team that played against them in the play-ins, it felt like they needed to beat T1 at least 10 times in the same game to actually win. The condition of the game just didn't matter. And eventually T1 was just be like, oh, I guess we can just play side. We can push inside further. And then we just need to find one team fight angle and just get into the game. I agree with the notion. I don't think their drafting was super impressive or anything out of the box. I think the main thing is that they understand the dynamic of bot lane and which bot lanes are going to be the most important to pick, because even that game 3, right, a big problem there was that Team Liquid just wanted to go for a Zyra Khan angle, which is the classic for theirs. Code JJ, of course, has a skin on the damn champion, but in that moment, to pick Zaya as an answer into Vi, to of course deny her the ult, you instantly create a scenario where, okay, they're going to pick Zeri Lulu. They could have picked Caitlyn Lux. They could have played Yumi lanes. They could have done so many different things to just make the game about how volatile can bot lane be, and just really, really, check you on your mechanics from minute one. And that's exactly what they did. I think T1 is really tuned into their own identity. And I think that's probably the best takeaway that you can do. And of course, what you mentioned before is that T1 tend to ramp slowly. Now we can easily say that some of the mistakes they did here are mistakes that won't be tolerated by HLE or BOG, because you can't simply just... Maybe you can in some sports, maybe you can team fight your way out of some situations, but the other teams, the two teams that I mentioned, are also known for this. So leaning onto that is not something that is guaranteed, but they are very, close to their own identity in terms of playing through bot lane. And also, T1 as a team tends to ramp up in a tournament. I think Worlds last year was a very good example because they had a very close series against IG. They had bad games against like Mad Lions, and so their playing run was very suspicious. Even going to 5 games to AL, considering how they finished the tournament, they were always kind of dancing with the devil. It's like it was one misstep and it could have gone wrong, but the romantic idea of how clutch they are just seems to be reoccurring. So even though on paper it looks like they should lose against BOG and HLE, but there's always that little thing that makes you wonder with T1.
I also did think, by the way, my alternate angle that I was going to do for the skip, but I thought it'd just be too abstract for people who didn't like watch all the drafts, was I was also going to do one where the joke would be Yamato. Because if you notice, we're doing these as it's like a Key and Peele skit or something where it's the concept's the funny part, more than the execution, right? The other angle I was going to go with is you could have a whole thing where it's a bunch of people who are like, I'm a support vibes addict, and then like you have an intervention where you have to sit down all the other supports at MSI and explain to them like, you're not Keria. Because, bro, So this Play-Ins also reminded me of why I keep saying on these shows that the two players who are ruining the fucking draft for every other coach is Kerrier and On. And it's all down to this Camille Support pick, Yamato. Because when Kerrier and On pick it, it is the most OP shit you have ever seen. I'll give everyone a quick abstract analogy that'll actually help you understand why pro players fall for this. Which is, haven't we all watched an esport that we know, like League or CS? And when you're watching it, and you're watching the best players go off. Bro, this is why I actually think esports has to be acknowledged as a marketing tool. The second the game ends, think how many times you go, I feel like playing the game, bro. Because what you're imagining is how fun it would be to be that Pike Carrier, or to be, in this case, an OP Camille Support that's fed and you're just shitting on people in the game. Here's the problem. Haven't we all watched an amazing Canyon Lee Sin and then gone, you know what? I kind of fuck with Lee Sin. You go into the game, you just miss your Q, or you go in on the Q, you get insta 100 to 0. You don't like, you flash to do the insect, they move just out of the way, you don't land the insect. The second you're like 5 minutes in, you go like, shit. Yeah, the problem there is I was getting off on how good Canyon is on Lee Sin, not actually how good Lee Sin is, because I'm not Canyon. Bro, Kerrier and On have ruined the brains of all these supports, because how many supports just in the plane alone, Yamato, were like, I'll take the Camille boss, and mate, these Camille's were getting nothing done. They were just getting their heads banged in completely. You know, every possible, like, I swear they lost almost every match I saw, me. It was so bad. But I get it. Like I said, I think it's a very human mistake. I totally get why, if I was a support player, I would want to play that. The problem is, you need the coach to go, no, listen, I love you, son, but you ain't Kerrier and On. You can't, that's above your pay grade, you know. Like, it's like when you tell kids don't attempt any of these stunts, he's a trained stuntman. Like, you can't do that, bro. Stick to the Lulu, you know what I mean?
And then, like, in the same skit, you have like the enabler, like the coach there. It's like, you can play Camille into his bard. You can win the game with Kayo Camille against his bard. That's easy. It's a counter, right? It's like, look.
Because when you shocked how many Camille supports we had here, bro. We had a lot in this plane, mate.
It's just, I was the same thing, right? I remember when like a Nivea support was picked.
Yeah,
and then it would just pop up, and you'll be like, no. But maybe people didn't watch the Scana game yet, you know.
We should be grateful for that at least, because I think a lot of these people, you just can't. It's really hard to pilot that champion, to even get it online, to make it relevant. Yeah, also, and like everything. By the way, isn't historically this why like Silas was so great? Because if you're a fan and you see a fed Silas, it looks like the most OP champion ever. You cannot even get out of a lane if you're playing against the best players. Like, that's why that champion was actually fairly well balanced, because to actually even lane it against some god tier play was really hard. And if the jungler fucks you up, you never get any CS. Like, I've always thought, one thing I'll give credit to Riot for is any time there's like a weirdly OP champion, usually it's not some Yumi easy to pilot one. That's rare. It's usually that's really hard to get it online. Like, you can't get it to the point where it's OP. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I'll give you another classic example. It's one of the reasons why the West plays so little Jace top over history, because you'll never get it to the point where you're just destroying people with the shock blast and armor formula, because they'll smash your head in lane. Only the LPL players and LCK carry tops could do that. So I do think that's like one area to start with, because I do think draft has been quite important in a lot of these series. Like, when we talk about KC in a second, it's going to be a lot about draft. So I think this is actually one area where I hope these teams, look, these playing teams aren't in the main event anyway, but I hope the other teams in the tournament took note of this, because I get that in Fearless, you got to go deeper in your pool, but some of those champions genuinely should probably be off limits for you. I don't even think you can do the thing, Yamato, where it is a Fearless draft meta concept to pick a champion so that someone else can't in the series. I don't even know if that'll help you, though, because even if you pick a Camille against an On or a Kerrier, bro, they're going to be amazing into it. You're going to have a really hard time doing anything, and you're probably better off just banning it. You know what I mean? Like, just don't let it in at all. If you really fear it, just ban it. I don't think you can pick it. I genuinely think it's not a viable champion for most people in the world.
I think that's like just the best place to start in the conversation of just misguided, like taking ideas from other teams, because that opening game for KC against Team Liquid, you had something that was so contradictory to what we know KC to be, but at the same time, a draft that on paper is very strong. If we put ourselves in a situation where KC is playing against, like that draft in particular, they have Vayne top as a counter into Gnar. They have Ziggs Camille in bot lane, Wukong and Ryze. if HLE or BOG play this draft blindly against anybody, I think they're going to win against anybody in the world. You have Kumoyushi, you have On, you have Delight playing the Camille. It's like they've already proven themselves on it. Weak side for Ziggs, and then you have, of course, 2 solo laners with good synergy. They're going to dive the Gnar 50 times. Vayne is going to be unstoppable and unkillable, and you're not going to be able to breathe in the game because your counterplay into the Ziggs is just non-existent. But in that same game, we see a team that is trying to play the Camille. It looks good. Camille high win ratio looking good in solo queue. Everyone's playing it. And then you have the situation where a common problem that we also saw in Europe with historical champions that were picked a lot in Korea and LPL. Another example is, for example, Lucian Nami. It's like people pick Lucian Nami, and then the players play Lucian Nami. They learn how to lane with Lucian Nami, but they never will learn how to win games with Lucian Nami. And that's the step that they never follow through on. They pick it. We saw in interviews, right? I think, I don't know, I remember who mentioned it. I think it was Kalist or Reaper. Was like, they got smoked by HLE and BOG and decided to adapt. It's like, yo.
The oldest mistake of the West in all of history. It's like, whatever beats me must be better, not the player. It's the pick. The pick is what did it. Yeah, of course.
It's like the equivalent. It's like, oh, Jordan just dunked on us. We just have to dunk like that.
Yeah, that's like what they're doing.
Start flying in the air, you know. That's the angle. It's just plain and ridiculous. And I think that's the place to start, right? With KC. The weirdest part about this series, right, and KC's run here, because but the series against T1 is like I don't care too much about how they lose against them. I just felt like T1 is the better version of what KC tried to be. And they tried to challenge them in the bot lane in the matchup and just lost at minute 3 every damn game that they played. But this one in particular, KC didn't know Team Liquid at all. That is painfully obvious. And second, they didn't know themselves at all either. Because in that game where I described the concept of the draft, it's like Ziggs, Camille. That means that Camille is enabled to roam even from level 1. You can sacrifice Ziggs, you can invade the jungle, you can create like these counterbalances. And then how on earth is Gnar supposed to survive against Vayne in lane first, and then a Camille and a Ryze that just dominates the map? On every stack and wave, you can just be killed and dove and murdered. And your value as a Nocturne is going to be tough to enact because you come online at level 6. In that game, we had the situation where the first gank that happened from Ryze was into bot lane. It's like, we are roaming with Ryze, sacking a mid-wave, Ana Raptors level 4, Ryze is ghosting into bot lane. Why? I have no idea. Wave was even, they're trying to gank for Kalist. And then first gank the Wukong did was also in bot, level 5. And then later on, everything was just around the Ziggs. The mid to late game, where are they fighting? On the mid wave, 5-5, around, once again, Kalist. And I understand if this is your play pattern, because you're under pressure, under stress, you're supposed to bring to the table what you've practiced the entire year, and you're supposed to really, really live your style and really commit to it, because you're not going to be able to pivot, especially pivot in a way where you're trying to catch up to everybody else that's been doing this entire damn year. So in that game, you could see the conflict of them trying to execute a style that just isn't theirs, and they couldn't do it at all. We didn't see roams into the Gnar. We didn't see a snowball onto the Vayne. And even worse, like Kana looked like the one that played against Oscarinin, where he just tumbled into Morgan at level 4 and just died 1v1, which was, of course, very atrocious. So there was just a lot of pressures happening at the same time for KC, and the additional layer of it, I also said that KC didn't know themselves, but they didn't know TL. It's like, Reaper, you lost against Quid's 100 Thieves. Like, you know these guys. You know Team Liquid. You know, in terms of what some of these players are and what their play patterns are, in terms of what Core JJ likes to play, in terms of playmakers. You know that Quid, you don't want to line them up to play the melees. Like, these are very, very easy details to come through on. I understand the notion of giving something up like a Lee Sin, because maybe you know he's going to pick Lee Sin first and you can set up a draft. But maybe you set up like Poppy, Talia, and the whole draft is about just making it as difficult as possible to play Lee Sin. But you give Lee Sin to pick Jarvan into it? That is just, that is where Lee Sin thrives. Lee Sin is considered the counter to the Jarvan. So it's just the preparation from KC was just atrocious in every way possible. Even going into 4-5, that fifth ban that they did is going to haunt me forever, because in what planet do you feel the need to ban Syndra when the enemy is showing Mel and Ornn already? You actually helped the enemy by banning Syndra, because if they picked Syndra there, they would have lost the game just on the spot, because they are full AP and they just get outskilled on Mux. So very, very strange from KC. Extremely disappointing, because they just gave up on themselves completely and didn't show all what their strengths were regionally.
No, I'm with you. Like, first of all, on the whole thing of like, because like I alluded to there, that is, I've mentioned this a million times. It's normally the Worlds bootcamp where this happens. And famously, actually, it's normally, here's what's funny. One thing that's going to be cool about this episode is because we get to, like, I know last year, the year before was all about FlyQuest. Boys, we're going back in time like 2 years now. This is Team Liquid again. They're back to Team Liquid strengths, bro, where like Spawn's doing a great job drafting, knowing his own players, drafting things that make sense for them, that are playable. And then they hope then the players do the rest. Like, the reason why this is cool is traditionally it's actually LCS, not LEC, that has had this problem where they would go every year to Worlds, go to the boot camp. First week, you get the shit kicked out you by the bad Korean teams. Finally, you get some scrims against the other ones, or the other way around if you lose the scrims against the top teams first. And then when you play the best teams, they either fuck with you and style on you in the draft so you make the wrong assumptions, or even worse, they beat you but with stuff that you can't play and haven't played all year long. And then your brain goes, well, that's the best thing in the meta, so we better play that. So I want to give people a quick example, right? One of the reasons why when players individually are amazing at like first picking or picking things that they've never played on stage and first timing, like we have two of the best ever from Europe. They were actually both Fnatic top laners at one point. It was Soaz and Wunder, wasn't it? The reason why these guys are actually sort of geniuses at League of Legends is they're not just like playing something for the first time and copying their opponent. What they always understood, I figured, was like, this is why people say Wunder's more of like a theory player than a solo queue player. You can tell that actually what Soaz and Wunder are able to do is before they lock the champion in and play it, they're able to just come up with in their mind, like they can imagine a concept of how this champion is going to function in the game. They're not just thinking, I'm just going to win the lane or it gets OP kills or something silly like that. They're thinking something like, all right, I can see how this tool could be used in this way. And that's what I'm going to, look, it's going to be scuffed because I haven't played the champion officially, but I think I can get that off. And now I think people underestimate it. That's really fucking hard. And you notice, we normally only let people do that who are like geniuses like that. Like they've shown this incredible talent to first time stuff, to just play things that they don't normally play, but they sort of download. It's like the fucking Matrix. They download how to fly a helicopter. They can just do it. Not the best helicopter pilot ever, but they can fly it. They don't crash it. Most people, if they play something for the first time or they haven't played it all year, they go to crash the helicopter in this analogy. Like it isn't even going to get off the ground in some cases, like the Camille picks I'm talking about. So if we tie this into the Liquid KC one, I agree with you completely. Let's talk about Liquid in a second, but I think it's KC absolutely was their own worst enemy in these drafts, bro. I mean, that game in particular is the nuts one, the game too. Because you not only gave Jose Diodo, remember, guys, if you watched any of LCS, there's a reason he was an MVP candidate. He was one of the absolute best players in the whole league. He was even good when Team Liquid was fucking bad, bro. That's how you know this guy's actually cracked. And his whole strength has always been mechanics. And you've given this motherfucker his Lee Sin signature pick. Like, you are just begging to get your ass kicked and then in the same game, as you say. Look, it's not like Yasuo specifically is a Quid champion, but as you say, Quid is actually like legendary in LCS for fucking being a melee champion player. This is, if you can put this guy on the LYON or something, you've given him a draft where like he's just going to be mad comfortable with that. So I know what you mean. Like it felt like KC. This is one area where like Reaper was like second. It's like he like 200 IQ'd himself, if you know what I mean. Like he outdrafted himself bizarrely. It's so weird because in that scenario, I've actually tried to think about this, Yamato. I've tried to think like in a BO5. In theory, there should be a scenario where you could do something like Game 2. You could try and drain their pool. I mean, I think a lot of us argued that that's what teams tried to do last year against T1, right? You try to drain, for example, Faker's champion pool by picking those things yourself. Or you can sometimes you could argue this angle, you can give them their picks early so they're not there at the end of the graph. So if you get to Game 4 or Game 5, they don't have their signature Lee Sin, they don't have their Yasuo. And so what you're even saying there is if we can get a draft that's vaguely playable into, we'll gamble that you get your pick early, but I'm not going to let it get to the end where then I have to ban your pick or you... We're going to do that. That didn't even work here. Like the logic didn't work out, unfortunately. Like I say, it genuinely thinks that they just overthought it. Because could that even be true, Yamato? Surely they have to know the strengths of these champions. They have to know that Jose Diodo's that sort of player, surely. They can't really be going in blind, surely.
I honestly, it's like that the T1 angle where they gave Bard to play Camille, that's at least there is some degree of
Yes.
justification.
Yes.
Because on paper, that should be a very good matchup for Camille. And like we had two teams give Bard to Keria specifically because you don't want to be in a situation where the enemy has a winning lane into you. And Bard is historically just a weak laner. So it gives you breathing room and makes the dynamic of the game very different because, for example, Team Liquid, they got the Core JJ Rel in that game, which is something that you're not going to be able to pick otherwise, especially so early, unless, of course, you open Bard. So this is something that I can easily clarify. The infamous one from my side, right? It's like, why is Yamato giving Yuumi? It's like, yeah, we gave Yuumi because we wanted to play Lucian Nami at all cost. If we banned Yuumi, we would have to play Lulu into Lucian, and we just couldn't as a team. We just were very, very bad at that. So when we opened Yuumi, we could create draft dynamics where we knew exactly what was coming. There was the game against EDG that we almost won, where we knew that everyone paired Sivir together with Yuumi. So we made the draft as hard as possible for, of course, Sivir by playing a Kalista lane and Azir, a champion that simply Sivir couldn't trade with. And if we create a dynamic where we remove Yuumi from the pool, suddenly they first pick Azir and we don't get access to the champions that are strong for us. It's all about, like, if you invite something, you better have a damn answer. And in that moment where they gave Lee Sin away and they drop jungle to pick Javan in the 4-5, that was just extremely, extremely confusing because not only do you do that, but you improved the Lee Sin by banning Poppy yourself. Why was Poppy banned here in this game? I really don't know. And that's something that Yike is known for. Because if the opening draft was, oh, we give Lee to pick Poppy, I'd be like, all right, I can see this work out. Let's see what the angle is. Because suddenly you have Poppy that maybe denies some of the melee champions of Quid. And you can kind of playfully think about the idea of how that might play out. But here, you just created a dream scenario for the Lee Sin. With having Yasuo mid lane in a matchup that makes sense, where they need an AD mid laner for it to work out. On the other side, Team Liquid made a horror game for the Seraphine to play. She needs to play around Mel W and a Yasuo wind wall. That should be an impossible game for the Seraphine to play out. So they invited the Seraphine, and we heard Spawn also say himself that they invited the Nivea. That's something that they knew was coming, and they just had a plan for it. While KC, the main thing for me here is I'm just looking at, it's a reoccurring topic. And I'm going to say, Reaper as a player, legendary. His run on EDG, also legendary moment. His early run on C9, also legendary. He beat me at the World Championship with that team when on paper they were worse and they managed to pull it through. But post Reaper coach to Japan and coming back, the best of fives that kind of end a split, end a season, they are far too memorable for all the wrong reasons. And it was the same with the Jojo Pune run. It was the same with the run last year with C9. And now here in this moment too. Those coincidences happening can't be coincidental anymore because it's just a reoccurring pattern of just wrongful conviction with very little to gain. I remind you guys of the Jojo Pune Blabber collapse against 100 Thieves, which was coincidentally Quid as well, where they played Nidalee LeBlanc back-to-back in a BO5 that is going to determine if you go to the World Championship or not. And then the team, of course, full-on just collapsed. And I think, I have to put a big question mark on this because this preparation is just so bad.
All right, we'll talk about some of the players in KC because then I want to do like a whole section about Liquid. Actually, it deserves some praise. It's kind of a cool angle. So, especially because they've done the bounce back. Like it was only like a month and a half ago. They were relevant and nobody knew if anyone should give a fuck. So here's who I want to start with. It actually pains me to say this, Yamato, but this is one of those moments where either we were just unlucky and the best of Canada never got to play internationally last year, or maybe he was semi-fraudulent. Because what's bizarre is if you put him in a regular season game in the LEC, the guy's fire, mate. He's one of the best top laners in the world. It looks like sometimes he looks really, really strong. His champion pool is very impressive. He actually is the whole meme of like he obviously speaks Korean, not English, in the joke. Like he's got them all. He's got all the fucking strong picks. And you think about how long now every version of KC that he's been in lives and dies off him allowing them to team fight basically and get to those big fights in the game because he's going to be so strong. Bro, here's the problem. Remember last year they went to the first stand because they won the first split, and then they missed MSI, they missed Worlds, they missed first stand. Now it's only now all the way they get to another international tournament, they go MSI. Bro, here's what's sad. If you think about the discussion we were having about Team Liquid Morgan for most of this year, the discussion went like this. Why did they pick him up? This was probably a bad move. This isn't some berserker kind of move, actually. This is someone who looks like they've sort of like drowned in the kiddie end of the pool here. Like, you were hoping because he's a Korean player and he's experienced, you know, he's going to come and be one of those players that can be like an MVP candidate. Bro, Canna made fucking Morgan look like a genius in these games. Like, and also, by the way, fair play, we can talk about this in Liquid one. Fair play to Morgan. His level's way better internationally, actually. He looks way better than LCS. But Canna fucking looks really bad, bro. I mean, people will know the downfall of Canna began last year with the Oscar series, but he's now had this a few times. He had the odd playoff game in Europe, and now this is just ass, this performance at MSI, bro. Like, actually, I know a lot of people are putting it all, I'm going to do in a second myself, on people like Calist, etc., because we have high expectations, but I have high expectations for Canada too. Like, I genuinely thought last year, if he'd have gone to Worlds, maybe he's back on a Korean team, maybe he's on like a fucking Gatesy Rolls or something. Like, I thought he sort of deserved that shot back. This is actually a real black pill for the future of KC, because I thought this was a player you keep on the team and you're going to build around him and you build out the squad. This I guess, don't you think he's had a really bad performance here?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's very disappointing, and I think the main thing as well is like the same way we would do with Reaper. I would in my mind also think about the deciding series that define Kana's year and his moments. Obviously, anyone's moments that are just going to be remembered as your most important moments. It's like I already mentioned that collapse against Oscarinin. That was a player that got replaced.
Yeah.
He just got replaced by Empiros that cooked you so damn hard that it was just impossible to forget, because the day after, Mirwin dog-walked him. Like, Mirwin made fun of Oscarinin. And in that moment, we were like, Oscarinin is just a funny guy. Sometimes plays good, sometimes bad. But maybe, if we look back at that, maybe Kana just had a disaster series. I'm trying to think back to, his run on Damwon as well when they went to the World Championship was also very disappointing. It was always like, regular season, very decent. And then push comes to shove, he could never punch up. There was never a moment where he could be like, oh, if the players or the enemy was better or on even footing, you'd be like, okay, he's just going to be a non-factor. I'm trying to think back as well when he was on T1 and they played against Damwon. Also in that moment, he was very, very quiet in that series as well.
Yep.
Even his beginning on KC, when they barely didn't make playoffs, he had a horrible start to, of course, the LEC. And he was very lucky that MKOI threw that 10K gold lead, because otherwise they wouldn't have made playoffs. And maybe there was a world where Kana didn't have a career, which is very, very strange to say, because I'm with you 100%. When it comes to regular season games, he just looks like an MVP candidate in every damn split he's played since last year. Obviously, the winter finals is the one that stands out, that is going against this narrative, because in that one he played very well. But at the same time, that was G2 dealing with their own choking issues at the time, with Labrov and Skumon just not performing at all in the finals, leading up to, of course, the summer, where they finally won their first chip after all the painful finals that they played before, where they got 3-0 by KC and 3-0 by MKOI. So with that being said, I do think this is something that you'll have to think about. I think the main thing, that the main blessing for them, right, is that we look at the other teams in the LEC, because we're thinking about the World's qualification here, and we're thinking about the other teams in the LEC, and we're thinking that, lucky for KC, these other teams are just dealing with way bigger issues than you have. So top 3 placing should be very, very easy for you, even under the pressure of maybe not making it to the World Championship.
Because in Counter-Strike, I always have a term I use for people. If you remember the guy who he actually just became a free agent. Now, the guy who used to play for Navi 2 years ago, called GL, he was basically a guy where he wasn't actually on paper like one of the best players in the world. But if you ever put him in a big playoff match, he was actually really good in like clutches. And when the game would get sloppy, he would like sort of make like a cool play. And it was very intuitive. So I always call players like that big game players. Because what I mean is, you're not actually necessarily one of the best players in the world. But if you put them in a big match, they sort of rise to the occasion, or actually better, when better players than them go down a level, they can sort of match them or beat them. Bro, Cannon's the opposite. He seems to actually be like potentially a very good player in League of Legends, but he just wilts the second you put a spotlight on him, or as soon as the stakes get big. This is not the guy you can rely on. And by the way, I'll tell you the last thing I'll say on Cannon. The reason why that's really sad is I also think traditionally top lane needs to be like a stable role. It's unless you're going to have like literally some super god tier character like a Khan or a Bin or something. You can't have like games where you don't know on this draft if I'm going to have like a stable game and I'll get to the team for off. I'll just be dead off a lane. Like normally you need to rely on your top lane. In Europe, that's why we're so cynical. We make them all weak side. So I think Cannon's also to some degree blown sort of star player privilege here, but we've given him his picks. He got his picks in this play. Yamato, he had everything. He had his Jays, he had the Rumble, he had all his classics. He just wasn't good on him, mate. He was just fucking bad. So I think it's a bummer because like I said, it's not even a player like I take pleasure in hating on. I actually hoped he'd reinvented his career in the West and he was going to maybe be like, some top lane core JJ where it's like, holy shit, we've actually got like one of the best players in the world, plays in the West. And he chooses to stay here. This is dope. Now it's actually looking like, for real, I'm not even trolling. If I'm KC and I've had these like multiple bad LEC letdowns and then now an MSI failure, like complete failure, this is a player where at the end of this year, I do think to myself, maybe we're the ones who get in the mix for the Naknakos of the world. You know what I mean? Because actually, maybe it's not worth it. And also, let's add in one other detail. One of the problems you obviously have is you've already got all the imports in your team. So if you can free up a fucking slot, that also can do some work for you if you're KC. So I don't know. Let's talk about some other players, Yamato. Because what's funny is, actually, the traditional player that everyone was ready to bash, Kiahu's not even the guy I blame. I think he actually even had some good games here, mate. I thought he even looked decent.
He's the best player, but best performer.
He's actually done the opposite. He stepped his fucking game up on. He's actually had some good ones. What's sad is it's actually the ones I normally rely on who've let me down. It is Calist, I've got to say. But let me just get this out the way at the beginning before we discuss his play. I have zero problem, Yamato, with him making those, what I think are sort of aura farming comments like, hey, I'm a top 10 ADC in the world. When everyone laughs at him for that, I'll tell you how I interpret that as someone who's known the scene a long time. I don't actually know Calist at all. I obviously have no secret contacts within KC, for fuck's sake. That's like enemy territory to me. But I've known pro players for long enough, Yamato. Here's what I would guess that statement means, right? If no one knows, what was the drama right after G2 won the split? It was that G2 wouldn't play against KC in scrims at some point in time, right? And that's because if you go and look at the remain thing, they were losing to them. So because KC was winning in scrims, I think G2, one, didn't want to give them confidence for the playoffs, and two, didn't want to like show things to them, like here's how you deal with our picks in the playoffs, etc. So what's funny about that is, if you take it that actually KC was able to beat G2 in scrims, here's how it would work in the brain of a young star like Calist. If I'm playing scrims, right, I'm going to assume because of how KC plays, if they're winning scrims, I'm assuming Calist also doing really well in the scrims and probably styling on Hans Sama. If I've just seen Hans Sama go to Worlds and go top 8, go to first stand to beat Genji and go to the final, and then in scrims I just beat him all the time, I'm gonna go, wait a minute, if Hans Sama can compete with fucking insert ruler, then fuck, I beat Hans Sama. Even though I know this isn't how it works, it's called transitive math if people don't know logic. It's called MMA math in MMA, where if this person beat this one, I beat them. We know that doesn't quite work, but it feels like that. You feel like, hey, if he's as good and I'm as good as him, and I wouldn't guide it. So I think in his brain, by the way, I actually think, even though it's fucked to fans, I think saying top 10 was him attempting to be mildly humble about it. What he means is like, I'm world class. He doesn't really mean there's only 9 players in the world better than me at ADC. I don't really know if I sat him down and really said, are you better than Jackie-Love? Are you better than, insert player? Like, I don't know if he really would say that. I took that more as a vibe. The problem with that is, though, like I say, that's not that crazy a comment. My problem is this. If you make those comments, though, you better back them up in the server, mate. Because here's the problem if you are Calist. Brother, I'm going to guess if I did sit you down and ask who the 9 ADC's better, I'm going to guess LYON wasn't one of them from fucking Team Liquid. Well, you know what? You've made yourself look like an absolute fool against him, haven't you? Because the worst thing is, Yamato, I also think Calist was in a prime position here. I think his team drafted badly, but I think he could have showed out in some of these games, mate. He could have actually looked fucking dope. And I always put Calist personally in that box of the like forgiven level talents, where it's like you look at the hands, you're like, fuck. You even look at like sort of his mind for how to like make plays in the game, and the way he'll walk right on the edge of the line and make a sick outplay. I think everyone who isn't fucking, I don't know, Spanish or something, pulls for this guy to be good. We want this guy to be one of the best players in the world. We want to say that, you know what, it's not just Caps in LEC. We've got fucking Calist, we've got Skewmon, we've got these players that can go head to head. The problem is, so far, Calist hasn't been that guy, mate. He definitely is really good in LEC. I think generally he's pretty good in playoffs. He hasn't got the same problem as the can as the World Terror, but this has been just an ass performance. Like, this is sadly a very regrettable international run for this guy, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you just in your mind, um, it's like it kind of similar to how like Diablo's run at first stand kind of fizzled out because it seems to have like their careers and what they are as players for their region respectively seems to be, there's a parallel there that is very easy to make. I think that as an ADC, you definitely run into like the problem of that you are just the circumstances you're given is something that you need to execute on. But even just simply in terms of the eye test, the mistakes that he's doing in terms of positioning on champions that he is known for, like the Varus in the final game that they played, you could clearly see that the collapse wasn't only on the team side, it seeped into the personal and the internal on the individual level as well. He had a very, very poor showing at this tournament. And, especially off of the series that we had against G2, the main thing that kept that series interesting was the fact that as a bot lane, they did manage actually to cause a lot of damage to G2's bot lane in terms of the lane phase. Because off of that best of 5 alone, I did think that Kalist looked as the better player in that condition against Hansama. But I'm not the type of person who judges a player off of one series alone, because I did rate Hansama higher coming into this tournament specifically due to just a larger body of work of having performances, especially when we connect that to first stand. But this was a very, very disappointing tournament for KC, and I think it just reflects on that question. A big debate point and a big conversation point was Kalis making the choice to stay with KC. And the main argument we always made for the reason why you would want to go to G2 is to have access to the coaching staff and the wealth of knowledge that is just, endless in the context of just experience that they have on that roster. And if you wanted to reach and achieve the highest highs as a player, that is probably the best place to do it. But you chose to stay with KC, and you are supposed to then be the leader of KC. And this was a very poor showing. Because we also have, this is not the first international, so we can compare it to, of course, his run at First Stand last year, where Kalis actually performed. He had a very, very good series there against Dogo and CFO. They managed to win the game 5, and they managed to bounce back after a rough start due to logistics, because they lost to Team Liquid there too, but they managed to bounce back, and Kalis was a very big strong point. I remember the game against Top Esports too, where if you are first international, you're beating Jakilov and you are beating Dogo and making a finals, even in a tournament that isn't the most competitive, that is still a very, very impressive track record to start on. This was very poor, because we could have a situation here with KC could have been bad and maybe they lost anyway, but at least I would have wished to see the angles in terms of how they laned. But I think just KC changing their whole identity and removing themselves from what they were, I think that Kalis definitely paid the biggest price for that.
I want to know, not just specific only to MSI, but I actually have sort of like a conclusion I want to ask about in KC, which is, I always say it, and I think it's only gotten worse. I think one of the worst takes of last year is right after the winter split last year when KC won, when everyone just rushed to Twitter to type out that dreaded line. They kicked the wrong player. They should have fucking kept Yike instead of Skewmont, because even though the Mickey X side at the time was based, yeah, Mickey X did look better than Labrov. The problem was people obviously were a little bit overhyping Yike, and I think ever since then, not only has Skewmont completely gapped the shit out of him in every sense, but actually, if anything, yeah, I don't think Yike's ever looked as good as he did in that first split for KC. Like, he certainly hasn't been as bad for me this year as he was like at the period where he just couldn't play a certain Vi basically, and that was like one of the more meta champions. But he certainly had some slip ups more recently, right? How much do you put on Yike's shoulders? Because I do think when people looked at him, Yamato, because he's not only a champion from G2, but he's also an older player. I always tell people he's only like a year younger than Caps, right? I think people do look at him as he's going to be the captain of the team, and he's going to be sort of like the emotional leader, and maybe he's even a shot calling voice within the team. So I've got to say, in some of these areas, I feel like he hasn't lived up to the billing, unfortunately. And again, if I'm KC and I'm going to be ruthless in the next season and ever want certain players kicked, it wouldn't be top of my list, but he'd be on my list as someone that I'd potentially look at if I can get it. Like, put it this way, the obvious angle would be if there ever is a sweepstakes to get someone like Inspired. I'm sorry, I'm trading Yike tomorrow for Inspired, mate. If I can get a player like that, I've got to. That's got to be an upgrade. Is it similar for you? Are you more kindly towards Yike? Where do you come down on the Yike question?
Yeah, the tricky thing is, right, it's like for the longest time, I did feel like this team was all hands, no macro. And when it came to their BO5 against MKOI and then G2, I did see a massive progression in that department. And in my estimation of how it's going to look moving forward is, can they continue from the point of what they progress towards? Or will they continue from the point of this massive regression? Because not only did they remove themselves from their style, they also kind of removed any form of improvement they did in the macro department, and that's largely driven by how your support and jungle play the map. Because
Yes.
KC got away with not being good in this department because individually they would just win team fights and they would just play mechanically well enough, and they would draft team fighting compositions and they would just keep the game very simple. Like they just had the mechanical power there, and things started to look up big time when Kiahu started to perform better and better. But this can only be described as a massive, massive regression. And if it's just an anomaly and they figure it out and coming into EWC, they bounce back, then maybe I'll view it differently. But if you have a team that has no macro, like that has to just fall on jungle and support. I think in the case of this team, I put a lot of responsibility on the actual coaching staff, because now we actually can look to teams, and the importance of coaches and how much we value them becomes more and more apparent now than ever, due to Fearless, due to drafting, due to the frequency of patches. Like we can look to the other teams and actually praise their coaching staffs. It's like T1, I have Faker and Tom, right? you look at HLE, they have Home, and his vision in terms of what his track record is clearly enacted there. We talk about Tabe often. We talk about Spawn. We talk about G2. This is going to be a very, very big predictor in terms of how successful teams are going to be, on top of course, also their rosters. Because if I just pose the question, if we had G2's coaching staff versus KC's coaching staff, and they would swap the rosters that they have,
Okay.
I could easily see a world where KC win the split.
Bro, they almost won it this time. It was super close. Think how clutch some of the play. I agree with you. That's even a thing I'm bombed out about from KC soccer internationally. Now every fan's going to go, G2's way better than them. It's like internationally, yeah, but domestically, KC almost had this thing.
Yeah. Like I just think that on the coaching staff front is going to be like a very, very big thing. And the cool part is about these coaching staffs that I've mentioned, they are very ingrained into their team. It's like they have given these coaching staffs a lot of space to grow and to enact their vision, because both Spawn and Dylan Falco has been a part of the team now for the last 3-4 years, and I think that's a massive plus in terms of recreating the kind of same energy when it comes to when your team actually performs, because this Team Liquid does feel very similar to the previous Team Liquid that found a very strong identity and leaned into it, and kind of found their own way to make their own identity in a world where the easy solution is to copy, but it's most often also the most wrong one.
Okay, well, we will now switch and talk a little bit about the other teams. But first, you know what? I've always thought one of the iconic lines in the movie The Matrix is that cool one where Morpheus goes, "You think that's air you're breathing?" And if you were to hand me a device, Yamato, and I drew on it, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a delicious flavor," and you were like, "That's actually air," I would be like, "Really? Tell me more." So go ahead.
Let me tell you more about Fume. So obviously, all of us that have had bad habits, we've tried many different ways of quitting them. We've tried, we Google tactics. We saw a TikTok, dip your water and you put your face in the fridge. You move your furniture around to kind of mimic a world where we have a different environment or whatever. There's so many ways of breaking habits, and maybe that worked for you, maybe it didn't. But Fume gives you an opportunity to try something different and something else. This is a device that when I opened it up, I thought it was electric. I was like, how on earth do I charge this? There's nothing electric about it. It is simply flavored air. And I think flavored air is, in terms of how it sounds, it is exactly how it sounds. It's like the least harmful thing on earth. Flavored air. It is just simply something in terms of what your habit is, because anyone, like, I smoked, and a big part of it was just how you fidget with your hands, how you have a feeling of something in your pocket, how the corner of your cigarette pack kind of cuts into your thigh ever so lightly. You know it's there. It gives you a certain comfort. The Fume device comes with a certain weight to it and something to just fidget with in your hands that gives you, the reassurance that sometimes your habits, of course, give you. Everyone's trying, quitting cold turkey and whatever. And sometimes people try to replace a bad habit with a different bad habit. This gives you an option to replace, a potentially bad habit, in most cases a very bad habit, with something very, very gentle, as of course flavored air. Over 1 million people have already used Fume to quit differently. Join them today and grab a journey pack, plus get a free gift with the purchase when using our code summoning. Addiction is very good at just telling you, I'll fix that later. And with Fume, you just jump into it and, replace it. You don't have to, get rid of a habit. You just replace it with something gentler and easy to use. So head to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com and use code summoning for a free gift with your first purchase. Thank you, Fume, for, of course, sponsoring this episode.
I'll give people a quick thing I was thinking about when I first heard about this product is, since I'm someone who's never either been like a hardcore cigarette smoker, and I've also never been someone who had any like addiction to alcohol, I used to think, like a lot of people naively, what's the point in alcohol-free beer? Like, surely you either drink an alcohol-free, drink something else, or you just drink beer. And what I didn't realize, and people will see where I'm going with this, is one of the reasons they invented alcohol-free beer is so that someone who is an alcoholic can still go to the bar with his friends and can still talk to someone. Because remember, part of what you're doing in that social environment is you have the beer in your hand, don't you? So it's part of that. You're still doing the activity. You're just not getting the negative experience. So similarly, I actually know a lot of people who I know who smoke, who say that one of the reasons it's hard to quit is because, one, you've got the like thing where you're used to putting something to your mouth, and you have that in the same way as you reach for your phone if you're bored. But they also tell me if you go out to like a club or a bar, well, when all your friends go outside to smoke, then you're the one sat inside, like, now I'm the one on my own, like, fuck, when they go. So if instead you can go out and you also get to feel like you're part of the activity, but without the negative concept, I can see it's actually a great premise. Yeah, so check it out. Right. This is a rare time where I'm going to ask for a quick, like, 1 minute break, and then we're going to continue with the show. So we'll just take a quick, my version of a dehydration break, because I need to actually remove water liquid from my body. I drank the creatine before the show. We'll be back in 1 minute, and then we'll continue with MSI. Right, we are back. So let's actually, we briefly touched it, but let's talk about Team Liquid, because actually I do want to go back in time a little bit here, Yamato. If you go back in time a couple of years, actually before Yamato kind of was on Summoning Insight, I remember the narrative that Monty used to hit a lot of the times. And this is one area I want to just point out, actually, that people always make a claim historically on Summoning Insight about Monty that's wrong. They used to say, going back to the earliest days of Summoning Insight, when people used to be in denial, bro, that like LCK was way better than LCS, people used to say to Monty, oh, you're just obviously like biased. So what happens is when you watch a bad team fight in the LCS, like, an ARAM style, they all just go mid and they have a bad team fight, they throw out the Baron. You just go, oh, look at that. They're all idiots who don't know how to play the game and they don't understand macro. But then when you watch a bad, a Baron throw or a bad team fight in LCK, you just think, well, since they're the best, there must be a genius to it. Like, actually, what they were trying to do was high level. And I always used to tell people, like, that sounds good if you just say it as a statement and don't attach any, like, specific example. But I noticed those people never ever used to link to an example, bro, because obviously they're just wrong, aren't they? Like, I'm sorry, there are fights that are, like, really close that, like, someone throws, but it's like an epic, super high level chess match. So along those lines, one area I always thought Monty was very, very fair was he was one of the people at the beginning of the Spawn era of Team Liquid when he had the Cordiage, the Yawn, and fucking APA. He was one of the first people who did actually acknowledge that they had really good fucking macro and drafting, though. Like, that was the thing that, unlike most LCS teams, they did seem like they nailed those two areas. And even though, in the meantime, like I said earlier, I think FlyQuest sort of stole their thunder and became the main team and they just weren't as relevant. Like, people have forgotten that is what this new Liquid feels like they've done. They remind me of that old squad because, first of all, bro, I think Spawn is killing it as a drafter. And this guy has a really, because notice he's not doing drafting like crazy drafts. He just always seems to get drafts that work for his team. I think he does an awesome job giving his team a chance. And then also, if you look at his team was so bad in the first split this year, but it feels like, I always say it, this split, it feels like every week they got better. And then by the end of the split, they were the second best team, mate. Like, they were absolutely right in the mix. Like, they were better than C9. They just weren't every sense by the end of the split. So I've got to say, like, I'll start with the Spawn angle. Like, I think, first of all, this Team Liquid run, I know it looks whack to say, congrats on getting 3-0'd. Like, that's T1. Like, for all we know, they might 3-0 everyone except fucking BLG and HLE. That's, like, plausible in this tournament. But then I actually think if you look at the way they played, though, Yamato, these were some 3-0s where, like, either they did a good job getting a decent draft or they were in the game even. There was even some games where, like, Jose Diodo got a few players off. There was a couple of times where they had a chance to feel like you're in a match. You're not just getting beaten from the beginning to the end. So I have to say, in general, you can start any way you like, but I actually think the way Spawn has run his projects, considering he's had to swap players and that, I think he's done a great job. And I can also see why. I see now why they did the gamble. Look, people might have laughed last split at the APA Quid gamble. That was a good gamble. You can see why now, because Quid right now internationally, I'm sorry, does give you a weapon you never had when you had APA. It doesn't matter what merit it was for him. He was never going to be this player, because I even thought that was one of the reasons why they also could go head-to-head with T1, is people might laugh at this statement because it sounds like a fucking Kalista, I'm a top 10 ADC thing. Faker's hands aren't that hot at the moment, guys. Like, it is plausible that Quid might be a better mechanical player today than Faker. Not historically, obviously, not at their peak. But if you just put them in a direct, use your hands moment, like, Quid's not an idiot, bro. He's a skilled player. So what do you think on Liquid? Because I'm with the fans. I thought this was quite a good run, actually. It's pretty admirable.
Yeah, I think, on the topic of, we already touched upon it so much in terms of the format. Definitely Team Liquid's another victim of that because, as I mentioned before, I'll mention it again, like this version of Team Liquid, I said ahead of the tournament that I had higher hopes for Team Liquid causing damage in the bracket than I would from LYON due to their playstyle.
Yes.
Because Team Liquid, the main thing they were always lacking was how they converted winning positions, but they would always be in winning positions due to how good early game they were with Jose Diodo just at the helm of it all. And a big thing they were always waiting for was the performance of their solo laners just becoming better and better. Same can be said for Yeon too. And I think at this tournament, Quid and Morgan had very, very good performances. These were by far the best performances from them that we had the entire year. And I do think that the story of Team Liquid really serves to highlight the metrics that you get challenged on when it comes to international play, in terms of how you deal with logistics and how you deal with, of course, patch changes, how you deal with scrimming against international competition, and how you can easily drown in data that can be very contradictory to what you might have found regionally, because the challenge of scrimming against HLE and BLG and even the European teams is going to be something where you're going to question the structure of everything that you've built to reach your conclusions about your champion, and navigating that and still having a sense of identity is a very big part of that challenge. And then, of course, you have the performance when it comes to stage play. In terms of rising to the occasion, very often more so than not, you're going to have a couple of players that are going to underperform. There's many reasons why a player could underperform at an international event, and even if we look at T1 and look at their run, everyone remembers, for example, Owner's moment of picking Mundo, but he played horrible that game leading up to that.
He basically
AL
almost
series.
lost it. He ended it. Yeah, he was into the shot of it.
It's like the story of T1 at that championship was that Faker and Gumayushi had to drag them over the finish line, and then eventually Gumayushi, like Keria and Owner and Doran too, they all caught up. Like, they all caught up, and even in moments of weakness, Doran almost squandered it, right? you have players on most teams. You have a couple of, maybe a player, maybe two, where they're going to underperform due to, could be sickness, could be illness, could be patch changes, because obviously these players are not bulletproof. And that's something you have to deal with. I'm not saying that to knock on anyone's performance. That is a very important aspect of the challenge. And I do think that Team Liquid managed that so much better than KC, because I think on paper still this roster is weaker, especially with how we see Kyahu playing. This is a roster that on paper is weaker. I don't think that LYON is a better player than Kalist on paper. This is just a question of them navigating their scrims, them coming to the right conclusions, them really leaning into their identity and having champions that they rally around. Meaning, like, there's certain champions we see on the team. For example, they found ways to make CoJJ play melee engages in every game of the T1 series. That's amazing. You understand the strength of your player, and you try to really orchestrate scenarios where his biggest strengths are going to be shown. And suddenly a CoJJ that looked like he was underperforming regionally clutched it up and found like Alistair combos that were vicious. We saw rel engages that were amazing on champions that maybe don't see it as much play. They figure out ways to, of course, stick to their strength. It was very similar. I can draw from my own experience. 2018 Vitality. We beat RNG and of course Gen G at the tournament, because we were getting stomped in scrims, and we were trying to navigate that as like, we need to just keep trying to do what we did. We played in the main event. We played Echo. We played Draven. It's like we tried to play what everyone else did. Like, if we scrim against IG and they really fuck us up, if we try to copy what they're doing and take away the wrong conclusions, we need to look at what they do and see what can apply to us. And maybe, Kaboshard suddenly playing Fiora and zoning us at be going between towers, level 1, to kind of cut them off on Aatrox. That's not something we need to replicate or try to do. That's not a part of our conversation. And I do think that Team Liquid, in terms of, those details, they really came together. And I do think that Quid internationally has always been goddamn strong. The 100 Thieves runs were cemented by that. I think he rose to the occasion. Morgan also definitely rose to the occasion here. Like, he managed to get, the better of course, Doran in the first matchup, but in the second one, Doran seemed to be like, okay, it's enough trolling. I'm gonna do my part, and he played better, because Doran, in the context of Zeus and Bin, might be funny in terms of some of the mistakes he does, but with everybody else, like Morgan, that was a Tuesday for him for 6 years straight. Like, no problem at all for him. But I do think that Team Liquid can walk away with their head held high. I still would have loved to see them play against LYON in this form. I would have loved to see them play against G2, FURIA. I would have loved to see those matchups, because still, you walk away with, oh, you almost won a game of T1. What the fuck does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. I would have loved to see them walk away with something meaningful.
No, and I'll take the last part first. Obviously, the worst part about the playing format is I've just got mad blue balls now, because actually, aside from T1, which was more like, as we said, like styling on people, Team Liquid actually played really well in this play, even in some of the, like, especially the first 3-0 loss. Like, Morgan was awesome in that one. In the second one, they had moments when they were in the game. So the reason it's a bomber is, when I watch this, I don't then think, like, look, yes, you can do the whole lol, we beat KC, and they've obviously done that last year at first stand also, people forget, so they've got like the record over them. But the biggest problem is, I look at the bracket now with the aforementioned seeding from the beginning of the show, and the first thing I'm thinking is, bro, I'd like to see this Team Liquid against FURIA, against Team Secret Wales. Fuck it, I'd like to see them against G2 now. I've just seen them beat KC comprehensively. Let me see them against G2, and sadly I won't get to see that, unfortunately, because of the way the seeding works and the format works, etc. On Team Liquid, right, first of all, like I said earlier, mate, I've bagged on this guy for years, because obviously I used to despise him when he was the shitter Morgan back on HLE, gatekeeping Chovy, so it was impossible to win the game. This guy played so much better here. It is crazy. Like, the first series, mate, I think that's even, it's not really, but if I was Bin, all your trash talk to Dora is justified by that first series. Mate, Morgan actually just smoked this guy in lane over and over and over again. His problem was his teammates weren't good enough to be able to do anything with it. Like, this guy was fucking cooking. Like, he was really good in that first T1 series. And then also, that series is why, unfortunately, you could never really believe they were going to beat T1, because I think it was game 2. Mate, if they had that snowball against anyone else, you just win the game, mate. It's just over at that point. But the problem here is, this is also why T1 is OP, because T1 has, like, they're not a one-dimensional team. Like, so for example, yeah, Doran was shit in lane, But even in those games, in the team fights, he still was fucking good. You think about the fact of like, oh yeah, but they're down in the game. This T1 team also has such insane bot lane strength with pairs, and they can just come back into every game too. And until they're literally, you touch their nexus, it ain't over. You have to worry about it. So I thought generally Team Liquid did everything they could, man. With the roster they have, remember, it's technically on paper and over performance. They made it here. I know now everyone looks back and goes, C9's roster sucks. It was the number one team in the regular season, guys. There's a reason why, like, because they were just winning every game. So I think Liquid did a great job this split. They did everything they could here. All they could really have done realistically, Yamato, is win one or two of these games. They could never have won the BO5. I think T1 is way too strong. And I do think also, like, this format, this is why I made the whole format section. Because if you keep doing it like this, best case scenario is that in the future at MSI, this play and the team that gatekeeps everyone's an LPL team, and even they'd probably still win. Like, I mean, I'll never know now, but I think even TS would still have won this here. Like, it'd be really hard to actually overcome their strengths as well. So for Team Liquid, you were never getting out. We've given you, we did what we could, but that's all we can get from it. And if you ask Spawn, you did a great job. I would just say this. There is no real thing as a moral victory. Like, you wanted to be in the main event. You wanted to play it. It just was impossible. What you do now is this, though. There are a lot of things I do think you can take from this Yamato and look towards Worlds with, though. Because if you're Liquid, you should definitely be at Worlds. And if you're at Worlds, hey, if you put me into a Swiss system, bro, where I can play all sorts of teams, this Team Liquid team actually has the fundamentals and some decent pieces. They could get some upsets. Like, I would love to see them. If you think of some of the other squads out there, I'd like to see this team against a KT Rolster or something, man. That'd be an interesting fucking matchup, actually. Or if they were themselves to play against, who knows at this point? I don't think it'll be Team WE. Could be, and anyone's legend or something like that. That's all of a sudden, that's not a foregone conclusion. If they play the way they did in some of these teams, especially the last one, I think there's a world where that could be an interesting matchup. I'd like to see them draft against these teams too.
Agreed, man. Yeah. It's just, once again, we get robbed by the format. I do think it's like you kept mentioning it, and I think it's true. It's like now, especially, like we can address it now, I guess, the fact that I'm gonna help C9 and help our boy Dom. It does, like this coming split does look tougher than ever. FlyQuest did a decent job at the cross regional competition.
Yeah,
we did
props to them for beating the Korean teams. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then we have of course, plain and simple, it's like Team Liquid is going to look more dangerous than ever, because this was always like a sleeping dragon in terms of what they could potentially be. Because if we look back at our old episodes at how we view Team Liquid's off-season, we saw it as a massive win. And this is, I think, objectively, like the first time where we can say to ourselves, damn, and now they're kicking into gear. And I don't think this is a team that is going to slow down, because similar to when Team Liquid started to ramp up the first time with the APA roster and so forth, they also didn't really slow down that same year. They started slowing down later the next year when FlyQuest finally beat them, and the meta changes were just too heavy to shift on. So Team Liquid, even in the context of winning LCS, like they can definitely do it. And I think that they look a lot better than they did in the LCS playoff. And the question is, will it stick? I just have trust in Spawn that he's going to make sure that this momentum carries over.
Because also on that topic as well, right? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do the thing as if we were doing an interview. I'll just ask you the hard question. Right? The obvious thing that everyone was losing their minds over on Reddit is that, right, the week before you were announced as coming to join Cloud9, on our show, you did basically say, like, that some of the roster's kind of crap. Like, it wasn't good enough. Like, look, I will say, already some of those players are being replaced, to be fair. Like, one of them already is being replaced, basically. So, like, there is an angle there that obviously it's not quite as simple as that. Obviously, I think people are worried of the idea of, like, how can you be an outsider that criticizes the team, but then join the team and not have had no ill feeling from the players? Or, like, I mean, an obvious angle for you specifically in your career is, even though, as always, I do think people have been ridiculous with how they describe your career. They make it sound like you did nothing, mate. You'd never know, if listening to them, that you, like, qualified for Worlds multiple times, were in, like, something like, I don't know, 3 or 4 fucking LEC finals. You've been top 4 about 5 or 6 times. You've had like a very, and people don't know, once you take out the top 2 or 3 coaches ever in Europe, Yamato's literally, by resume, like, next in line, quite literally. Like, there's people you might even think of more famous from, like, one split they won that don't have a great resume. So I do think that's exaggerated, but put it this way, the pressure is going to be there, Yamato. If this roster still goes badly, people are going to use it to hate on you. So what do you think about the whole, like, almost the drama element people are building up before you've even done anything?
No, I think it's you know, I feel like the narratives, especially on Reddit, on Twitter, tend to be almost negative about anybody. It just seems to be kind of like a place to like if there's a negative lining to anything, they will find it.
Yes.
I don't see the same like on Twitch or on YouTube or like in channels that are let's say a little bit more closed off, because often the commentary is very like low in nature. It's like do they really think that like I think it would be almost more impressive if I managed to fool everybody in the world to like if I managed to fool everybody,
Sure.
and get jobs and nobody talks to one another in terms of what I contribute or what I do, or players don't talk. It's like players talk, play like
Yeah.
like the network of information that flows is it's like everybody talks, everybody has friends on different teams. It's like it's a very tight knit community in terms of how opinions go. And on my side, I'm very proud of what I've done in my career. I have many high moments where, I think on paper, it's like that conversation of like, what are the expectations and how you beat those expectations. There's many years where I beat those expectations in ways that I think that nobody else could.
Oh, easily.
So it's like for my side, I take it for what it is. It's like Dom of course came to me, and in an ideal world, I would be there in person because, like, obviously, like I'm at a point in my life where that's just something that I don't want to do.
Yes.
Like, I want to continue with the podcast. It's like the Los Atones thing was like a one-off thing where it kind of fit because it was only one split, and Jack and Dom just found a way for it to work for me. And I said I want to continue doing all the same things, and they just basically said, "You're going to be on our payroll. Work as much as you want, and
Is
we're
the
going to
idea
see."
you're always going to be remote? Are you just going to be in Europe still?
Yeah, pretty much. Like
Right.
that's a setup now where
Right.
basically they were like, "Yo, we want you to work with the team," and then we just revisit. It's like if you're working way more than we expected, then we can amend what the contract looks like or anything. Like they basically told me, "We want you involved, and the level of involvement is completely up to you." And I said, "Okay, I'm working with Dom. I'm giving him backup because from Dom's position, obviously." It's like he lost Inero. Like Inero is taking time off, and he lost Inero, which is a tough blow to deal with because you've been through the trenches together and you've built like a way of working together, and you work. Of course, you figure out how to deal with your day to day in terms of how you distribute the workload and so forth. And I think from Dom's position, he needs people in his corner that he can trust because it needs to be very plug and play. And me and Dom, we talk about the game. We talk about it with each other like every second day, whether working together or not working together. And I can definitely use my experience to help him into, of course, the newly found head coach role that he's now in on the team, which obviously kind of came out of nowhere in the first place. And I think Dom is very well suited, and my role is going to be to support him as much as possible and figure out how I can be as useful as possible to the team. I'll be watching the scrims, maybe not live, because I still obviously want to do the co-streams, I want to do the podcast and so forth. I'm just not in a point in my life where I can uproot my life anymore. Like the cost. The cost has been too much on everything else in life, where I have made a lot of promises now that I really
Yes.
need to keep for the sake of my own sanity. And I can give example like when I was in Fnatic, this was COVID era, just didn't see my fiance for 2 years. It's like for me competing, I can blindly compete and just close off anything else because I think that's the only way to do it. And it was the same when I joined Los Atones. I was like, okay, for 3 months, I'll disconnect from everything else in life and I'm going to just lock in and do it because there's no other way to compete. But here with C9, they actually managed to convince me with a very generous offer that makes sense for what is important to me in this moment, because I've just given up way too much of my life to compete. But in an ideal world, I would be there in person in the trenches with Dom, but
Yes.
it's just something I couldn't offer right now.
And also, what's funny is I feel like what people are trying to do to Dom is what he did to Enero. Famously, he said when Enero was on like Golden Guardians or something, I can't remember which team it even was, where he was just like, he's just hurting his friends because it was all those like oceanic coaches, if you
Yeah.
remember. Right? Here's the problem. People have tried to make it sound like Dom's doing that because you were like part of the sack and stuff like that. It is also, they make it sound like he just hired Gilius to do it, bro. Gilius only just began as a coach recently. He was part of this. No. He hired Yamato, who I just said is just one of the longest tenured European coaches with a really good track record at all levels too, by the way. Like, one thing, without going into it all, I'm actually going to do a video on this because it pisses me off when people just like misrepresent history itself. One of the maddest things they do with you, Yamato, is they either pretend like your career was only fucking KC, or they do the thing where they only look in Fnatic and they go, but he didn't win, right? I always tell people this. Who the fuck's won since then? Look at those players. Those players don't win fucking championships. Spoiler, everyone now sees those players death, Humanoid, Razork. Like, if anything, Yamato had some of the best results with those players. You even referenced it earlier in the episode. There's actually a Worlds people forget. People in their brain think you only did the Worlds where fucking Upset went home. They went the next year, and at the Worlds next year, they beat T1 straight up, by the way. Then they beat Cloud9, and then in the third game, they played EDG, and they were actually doing quite well, and they almost 3-0'd the group of death, literally. There was almost a world where he almost got out. Twice Yamato's been in the group of death as an underdog team and almost gotten out. And that's ignoring, by the way, that with teams like Vitality and Splice, you're not even supposed to be at Worlds with those teams. You're not even supposed to be contending for the LEC title with those teams. That's absurd. So I think people do actually, sadly as usual, they either just have recency bias or they just don't know the history and they're just talking out their arse, mate. Because the idea that you're just like, because you were sort of leaning on it earlier. This is how out of date their narratives are, bro. Oh yeah, I think you and me would both agree. If you go back to like 2016 or 2018, there are some coaches back then that are just friends with a player, or the org owner just, the guy just sold the org owner a great 20 minutes pitch on, a fucking whiteboard, like madmen, like, hey, here's what I do in the team. But the idea that in 2026, giant orgs like Cloud9 are just hiring people for vibes, all because they're someone's friend. They aren't. Those days are so long gone, it's ridiculous, guys. Like, remember, we have a whole coaching ecosystem. We have tier 2, we have the ERLs, we have academies. There are so many tenured coaches out there that if they pick someone up, it's actually because they really think they're actually a good coach. And by the way, they actually have the track record that they are. And in your case, actually, I'm going the other way. I think the reason why I think it's a good move is because of what you just said. It's actually a rare time ever where someone can get someone who actually by resume would be a head coach of a team like Cloud9, but you're available on a part-time basis to remotely help out as an assistant. That's normally never possible. When someone goes up, you don't ever take a pay cut and go to a lesser role. This is a rare case where just because you're not willing to be a full head-time coach, now you're available to be like a complementary element to the team. And I'll even say this, as much as a fan might think, yeah, but he was negative about the team, sounds like he knows what's wrong with it then. Sounds like he's diagnosed the problems. That might be the person who can come in and say, guys, you all know I'm not going to kiss your ass. I was pretty critical of you as a team. Here's what we're going to change, A, B, and C, and then help Dom in that sense. So, and also, I also just think Europeans in general, are just, if you want to fix problems, I think Europeans is where you go, mate. If you want everyone to make everyone happy and go, yeah, great job, get an American in. They're good at that, mate.
Like I will not do the CV Max thing, because obviously it's like my critique of C9 and how they played. There's an added level of course, entertainment and theatrics added to it, because obviously we are streaming, we're on YouTube, and we want to be entertaining, we're having fun with it. And obviously I won't do the CV Max thing where like if I am like giving critique to a player that I'm gonna drop like the ace the ace of failure. Like I'm not gonna do that, It's like because at the same time, I think that players in general, I think that the community thinks of players like they are very soft. It's like, do you think like a player like Sven, who has such a tenured career and has been through so much and has had so high peaks, even as close to as last year, where in my mind he was the best player in that series against FlyQuest that went to 5, like as close to that. It's like, do you think a player like Sven, if I tell him, like, bro, you played kind of awful here in this series, and you had didn't have the best performances here, do you think he's going to be like, no, I played really good? It's like, no, he's going to be the first one to critique himself, because obviously he wants to get better. Like players are tougher than you think, and I think that they prefer people that are honest and direct with them and can actually back up things with ideas and solutions. I think that's the most important thing. But obviously, like if I'm delivering feedback to a player, I'm not gonna do the CV Max way, and the shorts and the videos have that added element of theatrics. The same thing with Dom, right? It's like Dom had moments, like people brought it up, it's like he critiqued tactical in moments where he played.
course.
Like obviously, it's like if he's
It
giving
was like
feedback,
5 years ago, so but yeah, true.
yeah, it's like if he's giving him feedback, like it's going to be a very different dynamic. But
Yeah.
it's been fun so far, like I am slowly integrating to the team, which is because of we have time zones and so forth, and MSI is ongoing. I'm watching all of the scrims and giving all feedback as I can, written to Dom, and I'm slowly just talking to the players. I'm gonna have like individual meetings with them, and we'll see. We're still figuring out how best I can utilize myself, because coaching remotely is also very new to me. But the main thing for me, I think, is to challenge, some of the rules and the norms that they've built up. Because having a person, obviously it sounds crazy for me to say it, as I am that person, but I would have loved a person that has experience to come in and actually like check me on everything that I'm doing.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
sometimes you're doing things because you've done it for a certain amount of time and you just assume it to be right because it's a part of the habit and the process. But being challenged on things on the daily, make sure that you don't walk into obvious pitfalls along the way when it comes to the challenges that you face then in playoffs, because that's where your foundation gets tested. And sometimes you can be blind to things that are right in front of you, and that's something that has happened to me in the past. For example, like 2019 Vitality, I wish someone told me certain things that to me are very obvious now, in terms of how to manage things and how to set up Mowgli for success, for example, that we realize in due time. But for me, honored and also blessed to be in this position. I'm very happy that I can continue living the same way, and that they have trusted me to offer blindly to the project. I think that's a great honor.
Plus, I feel like people are ignoring also because the drama of you getting added also was part of people's issue. People are ignoring two details here. One, if their whole thing was like Yamato criticized them, well, if you also watch some of the insight, like you'd have to know that opinion, you'd know last year Yamato loved the fucking low-key version of Cloud9. As we said, you hyped them up for EWC. You're a fan of low-key, he's a really good player. So actually, he's adding. It's not like APA is only middle in there. And then also, people are the one that got missed because there's just no drama about him is Arrow getting added mid. If people don't know, Arrow was in FlyQuest last year as a coach and as like the sub bot lane or whatever, like, because you have to listen to that. I imagine bringing Tactical in, one of his things he can do is help him integrate into the bot lane. Like, I think these are like interesting ads, man. I just thought it was a good approach. Like, I actually agree. Cloud9 had to change something. And so I think this like a mix of a shuffle of the coaches and putting people in different roles and hopefully where people fit their skill set better. And then also rounding out the coaching staff and adding in things you don't have. And then for players, they've also made, this is the thing that people are ignoring as well. They've tried to make the player changes you can. I know the tactical one might not sound that sexy, but again, boys, we're going into the third split of the year. There's only so many players available. Like, anyone good is already on a roster. They're already playing elsewhere. Like, this is not... So I think actually those aren't bad pivots. Like, if you have to make those pivots, go for it. People can't simultaneously, you might tell me, Sven sucks and can't possibly play. Okay, we'll bring in a different ADC. Well, he sucks as well. Fucking hell, I have to try some up, mate. It's not the off-season. I haven't just got my pick of everyone, have I? I can't just go, all right, you know what? This is signed fucking Super from that. He's not available. He's on MCoin right now. So I like these changes. I think they're interesting. And spoiler, I will always be myself, mate. If I think Cloud9 shit, I'll tell you. I won't just go, just because you're the coach, oh, shit. You're not doing that well. I'll say them fucking shit if they're shit. I've always done that. I'm obviously not going to be antisocial. Like, when Monty was a coach of Renegades and see, obviously I would never tell him to his team, the coach is a fucking moron, but I would ask him, Chris, why did you do that? It didn't make sense to me. I'll even spin that way. People try to do that angle of like, yeah, but how's the show going to work now when he's the coach of the team? You're right. There's a degree to which we won't speak in the same way as we would if no one in the room was involved in the team. Yes, I'll obviously, when I'm talking to you about Cloud9, take into consideration he works in Cloud9. But at the same time, even though you're going to lose like totally unfiltered analysis of Cloud9 from Yamato, you can also argue if we do a good job, you will get more information about how Cloud9 works based on what I'll ask him each week, win or lose, won't we? Yes, he'll have to do it slightly politically, but actually, I think a skill on podcasts is being able to say things without it being too dramatic if you want it to. And also on the thing about the idea of like, obviously there's an entertainment element to giving your opinion on a talk show. Mate, this is just one area you've got to understand. The audience will never understand the man on the stage, as it were. Because I get the same thing when I do my stream. When I stream, people go, wow, Unk is really losing it. And I go, I'm not. You do realise if I didn't have the camera on, I wouldn't say any of this shit. I would sit silently and go, nah, can you believe he's done that? But if I'm on my stream, I'm like, what is he doing? Why did fuck it? Oh my God, he's Russian as well. This is why everyone in Russia, war hates Russia. I'm going to do all things as entertainment, and I'm spicing sexing it up. I'm fucking sexing it up a bit. I'm putting a little. Oh mate, if you ever want Yamato, some really harsh geopolitical critique, just tune into when Thorin plays CS Premier on stream. Because mate, I'm the guy where look, I'll be fair. I do just do it as like a mad lib. Whatever country they're from, if they do something wrong, if a French guy won't give me my AWP back when I drop my gun for someone, then I'm like, oh, the French, can't trust them in fucking world. Yeah, mate, I always go straight to that, mate. But that's my style. You got to understand, that's how I do shit, okay? So, anyway, still not as bad as when people fucking make all those memes that are so close to the line about Kiahu from fucking KC. Those memes, just like, step back, boys. Normally I'm the edgy one, but y'all have got to step back on that. Those memes they're too harsh, boys. Like, we can get in so much trouble if the wrong sponsor sees those memes, boys. Just get away from that. I know he has a funny name. Just get away from that topic. Make a new meme. Make a new one. Now, here's the thing though, Yamato, before I leave this topic, since you as a coach are staying in Europe, but you're changing your region to be in North America, is there some sort of an app whereby people at home could do something similar? See how I did that?
Yeah, with ExpressVPN, you can change the country you're connecting from, so you can hear, if you are in game with Thorin, you can hear him flame you in many different ways. Now, of course, I'm kidding. You know, going online without ExpressVPN is like leaving your laptop unattended at the coffee shop while you, of course, run to the bathroom. That seems scary. And most of the time, you're probably fine. But what if one day, just one day, you come out of the bathroom and your laptop is gone? You know, connecting to a network, you know, I always share this story of, you know, growing up in school, you know, we had Wi-Fi, we had laptops. There was this application that was just going around that you could just download, and it would just extract any cookies that would be created on the network. So obviously, I don't know the lingo, I don't know the exact of it, but it was very easy to use. And, you know, you could easily log in to someone's Facebook account, because at the time, everybody used Facebook, and you could basically do whatever you wanted on their profile. And at the time, it was quite harmless, where we would just, you know, make status posts about how we shat ourselves or something, you know, something dumb, very harmless. But the fact of ease, that it was so easy to, of course, access to that, makes it a very, very, you know, scary proposition when it comes to, you know, how more online we've become in terms of how our information, our data is there, whether it's credit cards or banking or everything is happening now, of course, online. So going into an unencrypted network in cafes or hotels or anything, that's something that we should just never ever do. Any hacker can just use the same network and steal your personal data. Any type of data that you have can also be sold, and then suddenly you're going to have spam calls, spam emails, and it can be used for nasty things, because hackers can actually make money up to $1,000 per person selling personal info on, of course, the dark web. And ExpressVPN stops hackers from stealing your data by creating a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. It's very easy to use. In cases you don't even need to log in, you can just copy paste the code. You can use it on multiple devices, multiple laptops. You can use it on your phone. You can even use it on your goddamn PlayStation. It's very, very easy to do, and something that I've done. Sometimes I have issues with downloads, and suddenly you need to use a VPN to connect to a different scenario to be able to use a download. And in some cases, sites are blocked off, and of course, you have content that is blocked off when you pay way too damn much for these goddamn you know, subscription services. I'm supposed to be locked because I am regionally, you know, bound to a place. That's ridiculous to me. You know, the internet should be wide open and free, and ExpressVPN, of course, keeps it that way. There's a bunch of other services that they also offer through ExpressVPN. You can have a dedicated IP service just engineered with innovative zero-knowledge design. Not even ExpressVPN has access to your information. So if for some reason, you know, the world continues going to shit, and suddenly someone knocks on the ExpressVPN door and they say, yo, give me all of your data. They say, I don't have it here. It's in a different castle altogether, and that castle, of course, doesn't exist. So with that being said, protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/summoning. That is expressvpn.com/summoning to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months. Expressvpn.com/summoning is, of course, the URL. Go and get it done and improve your internet experience.
Right, let's talk about the upcoming matchups and then we'll do maybe like 1 or 2 quick questions and we'll get out of here. So, right, let's start with the one that we actually build from the seeding angle. We are going to get right out the gate in a full BO5 what could actually be the final of the event. For all we know, this could be the world's final, like it was, like I said, in 2024. So we got BLG versus T1, and this is obviously a really good BLG. Some people are saying the best team in the world, the Golden Road team. T1 actually has gotten so much stronger at the end of the split and looked fucking dope in these last matches they played. Like, and actually, as I said earlier, I think if anything, they haven't shown anything in the played, mate. Like, there's no secret sauce you can take from that. They were just styling on people. So, and then I warmed up. If you're BLG, you've been side twiddling your thumbs playing solo queue and scrims. So, what do you think of this opening matchup? Because I've got to say, on my Hot Take Point Made show, even though Kira is known to be like a big LPL and a big Knight fan, he actually thinks because T1 got to play the play-in and they're coming in like this, and famously they're a better figure, he actually is worried that BLG will just lose the opening matchup. He thinks it's actually a really dangerous one. So how does Yamato see this matchup? Who is he favouring? What are the big key points to look at?
Yeah, I think the main thing is like on paper, I do think that BLG is the stronger team. If there was ever, a jungle and support that could keep up with On and Keria, it is Shun and On. Because if we think about the other jungle support pairings, they are always relatively new in the context of how long Keria and Owner have played together. Shun and On have just as much time under their belt. There was like a little, separation. They were on a break there for a little while, but that seemed to have just strengthened the relationship when they returned to one another, when they realized that the grass ain't that much greener on the other side. They went to the dating pool. There was a beige one, there was a shadow, there was a way. On tried all different type of junglers, and Shun suffered together with Pace on JDG and just kept his form up because he knew eventually his loved support would bring him back. And I think that's an important detail. MSI is a very unique tournament in the sense that T1's magic can't be applied the same way as at the World Championship, because I do think that even though we've had 2 relatively big patches, the game seems to be quite similar, and even more so kind of hard leaning into what BLG's and HLE style is, where it's very, very fast paced. The game is driven through mid lane, and T1 is the outlier with, of course, this identity where they try to play heavily through bot lane because their solo lanes aren't the ones, that are going to 1v9 the game. Once again, we talked about the understanding your identity. Like if they came into this tournament, there's like, all right, Faker, we're gonna play around you and you're gonna be the hyper carry. Like that wouldn't make any sense. That's the equivalent of what KC did coming into that first map against Team Liquid. But nevertheless, to continue on the topic, I do think that BOG and HLE, because they're so similar in the sense they are very, very well suited for the meta. I think the strength of Bin and Knight is going to be exercised here, and I do think in a lot of the games in the play-ins, T1's solo lanes didn't need to do anything. Like literally, they didn't need to do anything. There were games there where Doran was playing 0-5 Yorick, and it just didn't matter. It was just like is a footnote in the story of the game, because it was always about bot lane and the jungle. I do think that Owner seems to be in good form. He seems to just have the eye of the tiger when it comes to the objective play. And the scary thing is, I agree with the notion, like if you are angling for a T1 win, it wouldn't be on the basis of them just looking better than BLG has in the lead up to the tournament or in the entire year. It would be on the topic of they are now warmed up and BLG is coming off cold. But I do think that the difference here is that the preparation for MSI is very different from Worlds. Teams get to scrim, teams get to play solo queue for a longer period. And I do think the fact that it's a best of 5 from the get-go allows you to actually warm up in the series. And I think that's a very, very important detail. Like we compare it to, for example, the World Finals where KT and T1 played last year. The first game, everyone looked off. But everyone looked off because the teams actually just didn't scrim leading up to that finals because there was nobody to scrim. There was nobody left, and they just kind of, had to deal with media and all that jazz. So everyone came into that tournament. But within that best of 5, you could see that players were getting better and better and more comfortable. And eventually the players that didn't reach that level of comfort were the ones that kind of made the difference in a negative way, whether it was Peter, you're just hooking in. So I think the fact that it's a best of 5, maybe BLG starts slow in the first game. Do I expect it to go all the way in terms of BLG's having a slow start? No, but I can definitely see the angle. T1 warmed up. They come into it and BLG being cold, but I do think that the rational side makes me think that BLG should be a strong favorite for this one, because I do think that MSI is just uniquely different to Worlds in terms of how much being dormant can have just negative impact on you.
I wondered where you were going to go with that, because I do think you're one of the people like Dom, but it seems like it's mainly just for Worlds, like you pointed out. For Worlds, T1's broken you guys. Like, they've just done it too many times. They've looked weak, and then they're like that famous, fucking gif of the dog where it's dragging its leg, and then it just walks totally fine afterwards. Like, they've done that too many times, Yamato. So as a result, I know that at Worlds playoffs, until they actually lose, you will always go, you know what, they'll probably pull it out. But I think that's fair, because I've got to say, I actually hope you're going to go T1, because I think BLG wins this series. And here is why. I do think the one area people are missing with T1, and you saw a little bit of this in the Play-Ins, is they're not the craziest laners in League of Legends right now. They don't have this like insane brute strength, but actually BLG does have that. The funny thing is, I actually think there is only one area that they have a big advantage on the side of T1, and it is Piers. I do think Piers right now clears Viper. Like, Viper has not looked anywhere close to as good. Piers looks like a demon. He actually is the player that we all hoped he would be. And T1 players around him. There's a reason why he's fucking around. And for funds, he's getting quadras and pentas. Like, yeah, he looks like he is the focal point. So I'll give them that. He can be really strong. But I actually think that's also why this matchup is a banger, bro. Because isn't this matchup, like, if BLG hands the fuck out of the lanes early, they can win a lot of these games if they snowball. But if they let T1 hang around and let it go to the late game, and T1 can do those fucking cheeky barons and then get in the team fight so Piers can carry, then there's a real chance T1 can be the clutch team and they can pull it out. So I'm interested stylistically, but I've got to say, I think that BLG gets it. I'll run down a couple of them. Here's why. Right, first of all, I do hope that we can all be adult enough to know that, because this isn't the World's playoffs, Knight clears Faker so hard right now, it is absurd, boys. Like, this, even Faker himself, I imagine, is going into this with the mindset of, like, I'm going to play around my weaknesses and my limitations. I'm going to help the team. I don't think he's going in thinking, like, he's going to do the shit he did to Chovy in that 2024 semi or whatever the fuck it was. That's probably not going to happen. Knight is way too strong right now. The obvious one to me is, like you say, I think the jungle support one is really fascinating. That's a fucking fabulous matchup on both sides. You're right. If anyone can match Carrier, even in the champion play, it's on. And he's playing his best League of Legends ever right now. People already know, actually, this is like more of an up year for Jun. Owner's been a bit more rocky, even though he certainly had some good carry performances. He obviously smited the shit out of all the TL series. The one that I actually think is the more fun one, though, is the one that all the drama's about. And it is the Bin versus Thorin matchup. Bro, one of the reasons I actually am a mad fan of Bin is because he actually is one of the rare players in League where the style of play does fit the personality almost 100%. Like, mate, he is actually like some mad swagged out guy who's on some like UFC shit. Like, put it this way, Bin is fucking Max Holloway pointing at the center of the octagon. That's what he wants with every single other top laner. He just wants to actually beat you directly. It reminds me of my boy Forgiven back in the day. He didn't give a shit if they won or lost the game, mate. He cared how many CS he got and did he push the other guy back in lane. Like, to Forgiven, he almost thought you win half the game just by making the other ADC ever go under his tower. Like, did you see that? Did you see that? I pushed him under the tower. It's like, mate, there's only me and about 4 ADCs care about that. But that's his swag. Bin actually has the swagger to be like, I love this, by the way, because if there's anyone on T1 who should be mildly mentally fragile, it is Thorin. So why not just fucking call him out before and just be like, listen, I'm a dunk on you, motherfucker. Like, I love that shit. I think it's fire. So the big problem I think here is just that. I don't think that the solos of T1 can stand up to BLGs. I actually think that's where they gap them. And as you said earlier, the real problem is normally that wouldn't be a problem because you've got the Faker shot call and then you've got the jungle support. This is one of the only jungle supports aside from maybe last year's Kale and Tarzan who can actually just go head to head with them. Because even if you think Carrier is better than On, is Order better than Jun? I don't know about that right now. I think it's a pretty interesting. I think this is one of those classic styles make fights. You've got the team that, if BLG wins early game, I think they win the series. And T1 just hangs in there. I think they win as the actual better like macro team. That would be my guess.
Yeah, like it's going to be like we are blessed that we get to see it, but I wish it was later.
I feel sorry for anyone who has to play this team in the first round of the lower bracket.
Yeah.
That's such bullshit. I know. That's just bullshit.
Yeah. I just hope BLG show up so all the people that don't watch LPL can be wrong in the assessment of the LPL, you know?
Yes.
I just don't want to deal with that shit. Like, I really don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with people
I
telling
know.
me that like BLG always gets smoked by T1 when the
Yep.
record states something very different at MSI.
Yes.
I do think that you know, it is like, you know, you mentioned it's like how Worlds has scarred us. It's like at some point you just have to look at it for what it is, right? It's like you have to understand there has to be a why. It can't be just T1 magic. And the conclusions I've reached are that's the why, you know, that's the why.
Yes.
And MSI just doesn't seem to be
No.
the same, because on top of that, right, it's like T1 gave chances. There were mistakes that we saw during T1's games where you're like, oh, if you do this shit against HLE or BLG, you ain't
Yes.
getting away with this. You can't get caught like this. You can't take fights without summoner spells. You can't mess up the in-between as much as you do. You're not gonna get 5 chances to get back into the game. You're not gonna be able to pull off, maybe once in a while you will be able to pull off like a miraculous team fight over the clutch. You're gonna steal an objective, but you know, the team on the other side are known for the same shit regionally. So like this is not something that you can pull and you know, BLG do the same thing where they look like they're losing and then suddenly they win a fight they shouldn't win because they are that mechanically good. I do think that just as a mechanical scrap, this is going to be like a thing of beauty. But I do agree with you that the early game is a massive weak point for T1. And I do think not necessarily that they are, you know, they don't have the way of playing the early game. I just think that in terms of how Shun and On connect and how they use their mid laner to dominate the map, like most standard teams do nowadays, is going to be something that will be a very unique challenge for T1 to deal with.
And then let's go and do what I think is the other fun one, which is obviously the G2 TES one. Because again, if we're going on historical trends, TS has been the most notorious letdown team from the LPL so many years. Obviously, people are even going to think of 2 years ago when G2 directly 3-0'd TS in that time where TS, I mean, people forget, sadly, they were the only team that actually challenged Gen G in the upper bracket, but then the lower bracket, they immediately got smoked by G2. And obviously, classically, they've even still got some of the same players. Like, remember, Tian has been on a dodgy TS before. Jackie Love is notorious, sadly, for being one where if you watch the LPL, he's absolutely one of the best players to ever play League of Legends. But if you've only watched Worlds, yeah, he's kind of a bomb. He's a fraud, isn't he? That's just true, I'm afraid. So this one, I also think is a really interesting matchup. Like, I can tell you one thing that might surprise people, Yamato. You would think because of the strength of G2 over the last few years, and also they've been pretty good internationally, and TS letdowns. Believe it or not, when I saw it last night, G2 was actually the betting underdog. A lot of people are taking TS. So how do you break this matchup down? It's obviously a hard one because with these are 2 teams that don't meet. So putting them together, how do you shadow box this one? How's it going to work?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that like I reached the same conclusion as the community, but in a different path. I do think Top Esports as a drafting team, and you know, just off of the basis that they have 2 players that have never been to an international, I do think that MSI is just notorious for really challenging you on your experience in a very harsh way. And I do think that we saw that from Cream the first time he played. And I do think that the story will be, even though I think Zweiwan and of course Feng Yue are just fantastic talents. These are guys are going to be representing the LPL for many years to come in terms of how good they are. And I do think on paper, and if we just compare what they've done, these 2 teams regionally, I do think that Top Esports had way higher highs. G2 is just right now, in my mind, the type of team that is going to ramp up and do better off of the boot camp. And I do think that the challenges, similar to how like Team Liquid beat AKC, I do think that G2 beating Top Esports on the same front, where I just expected prep work to be better. I expect their kind of fortitude to be better in a series. Like I think it's far more likely from G2 to bounce back from a 1-0 than a Top Esports to bounce back from a 1-0 due to them having rookies and also the pass of Jackie Love. But I don't think like Tian and Cream are going to underperform. That's still going to be a hurdle to overcome. And I do think that G2 stylistically match up well into that, because we're just going to see fireworks on the mid lane. But if the game becomes scrappy, if the game becomes, you know, leads to the point where team fights are going to be deciding, Top Esports is going to smoke G2. They're going to be much better than G2. But I do think that G2 have the capacity to kind of make sure it doesn't get to that point through better drafting and just a more clever execution of the early game. But if this matchup happened later in the tournament, and I saw Top Esports played it's somewhat similar to what they did originally, then I think Top Esports is a massive favorite. But based on not knowing, I would pick G2 based on that alone, but still with a relatively, small advantage in G2's direction. I'm thinking like 55-45 at a max. Even that is generous because I can easily rationalize why I think that Top East should beat G2. But the intangibles are a little bit too heavy in the air here. But for other reasons than others would say that I don't expect them to like choke heavily and just get 3-0 blown out. I just think it's a lot to deal with in terms of managing how you are going to go into an international for Top East specifically.
If people don't know, ZenAI, the new top laner of top esports, and obviously people were waiting for 369 to come back. So actually everyone looked past this guy and thought this isn't even the real player. He's been really good. Like, sadly, I looked this up. Apparently in 2024, he did play like 15 games for IG. So unfortunately, he's not a rookie. So for example, he didn't win rookie in the split. But I've got to say, like, if that rule wasn't there, I thought this guy was fucking dope, bro. Like, again, remember, guys, he's playing in the LPL. Like, if you play top lane, this guy plays the carry champions. He plays the ambassador and the Jace and shit. Like, this guy's actually like a fucking strong player. Like, I imagine even if a 369 returns in the future, this guy surely will be on a different team and he'll just be on like another squad. He'll be a good player in the top division of the LPL. Like, he's actually proven himself. So I think that's already interesting because remember, historically, Broken Blade is a viable position you can attack. So as long as this guy doesn't choke, it is plausible. I think that he's better than Broken Blade. I don't think that's some hate comment from me. Then the other one for me that's more interesting is I do think if you look at G2, you should. The funny thing is, Calist saying that's just his own vibe of his top 10. If Skewmond was to tell me I'm a top 10 jungler in the world, I'd say I agree with you, mate. Like, I actually think realistically, your real problem is you play in Europe. So I've only seen you at first hand. If I'd seen more sample size, I think a peak Skewmond could be like the 5th best jungler in the world. So I mean, it looks fucking amazing. The problem he has is this. If there's actually a player I had to pick stylistically that I think could go head to head with him, I think Tian is one of them, bro. Because first of all, he's got that crazy. I always tell people what impresses me so much about Tian, it reminds me of old Meteos, is his pathing. Like, there's no way he's coming up with all this pathing beforehand. He's coming up with something on the fly, I can tell. But his decision-making in his pathing is so coherent. Like, I could see him being someone who could adapt to Skewbond's paths. I could see him, also, by the way, one thing that's underrated about him, he's still got crazy hands. I know he's someone where I think people said a few years back he had, like, wrist injuries. Yeah, but when he hasn't got him, mate, he's got fucking really strong hands too. Like, there's another guy where if you give him a fucking Lee Sin, mate, he's going to tear your ass up. So I'm really looking forward to that jungle match. I think Skewmon's got a tough one here, even though people are looking past TS. The obvious problem, because I'm actually with you, I don't worry about Cream right now. I think one, now he actually plays majors, which is big. So I can feel like he doesn't have to, it's not every draft that you know he's going to go into the YON or the asset. No, now he can do a normal draft. And also, at this point of Caps' career, it's not really about like Caps is some like the biggest strength in the world. You just got to withstand him. You got to be able. So don't worry about Cream. The real, assuming the rookies don't fail, the real concern, I've got to come back to it, it's got to be my boy Jackie Love. If Jackie Love plays like shit, yeah, they're going to lose this series. If he actually just plays a good series, which he's clearly capable of domestically, if he doesn't have some crazy thing in the back of his head every time he goes internationally, I think actually I'm taking TS to win this one. It's harder because, again, I'm looking at two semi-rookies. I'm looking at the Jackie Love fail condition. But I think actually the strength of the team is, this is why I brought up earlier as well. People do forget how close the fucking LEC was. Like, absolutely G2 could have lost to KC. That's not some like outrageous statement. So I respect G2. I think they've got good players, but I think they have to play some peak league to win this one for me. Or get a complete failure from TS.
Yeah, just to follow up on the Tian point, because it's a very good one, because just Tian is the jungler that will make the impact of like high variance jungler lessen. When it comes to these junglers that try to find angles, like the junglers that really angle on you to try to punish you and try to like break the game to kind of get a massive advantage. These are the junglers that hate to play against Tian because he's just way too damn solid. We saw it when he played against Junja. We saw it when he played against Monkey. These are the biggest anglers on earth.
Yeah.
And Skewmond doesn't have that level of variance. He's not doesn't have that high variance, but he's definitely like an angler that tries to get advantage and try to squeeze that out of you. And Tian is just a very, very good defensive player that is just at the right place at the right time. This is the type of matchup where definitely everybody else will need to step up for G2 because it's probably not the series where I expect Skewmon to carry due to the jungle matchup. It is a very strange one, and Tian is unique in that aspect because in the end, it's like we talked about it on the show many times. It's like the junglers in the LPL they are very, very feast or famine, and you need to be ready to defend yourself against that feast, because those junglers 1v9 if they get to do that, and they do it in a way that I think exceeds far in danger in contrast to the other regions, because even the LCK, the junglers were relatively soft this split, besides, of course, Kanavi, who came out of the LPL jungle dungeon himself.
Okay. What we actually do have, if people saw, we were doing something similar in Counter-Strike, but with our partners who we've worked with many times before, Into the M, who make all the wonderful apparel, t-shirts, etc. We actually have quite a cool collaboration t-shirt for this exact time period. So if you check it out, it's one where you can see an image of like Monty wearing it. Well, I've got one as well. It's this really cool, like almost Japanese type design. I'm actually not sure if it's supposed to be Korea or what. It's like a pagoda type thing with like a beautiful, by the way, the colors look great on it. Also, it's one of those shirts where I can tell you, I actually like to wear this for comfort reasons. So it's actually one that I wear if I'm chilling out on a night. It's really nice. Even after I've washed it 4 or 5 times, it's still got the same like stretch to it. It still feels soft. It hasn't hardened or anything. Apparently it is Korea, so this is like an abstract, subtle way to hint at the fact that the tournament's in Korea and we're celebrating like Korean heritage. Also, a cool thing if you think about it is you can wear this out in public. Like no one knows. It's nothing to do specifically with esports, so you're not going to seem like weird or, oh, what's that? Is that some nothing? It's just a cool looking t-shirt with like a nice design on it, and that's one of the things about Into the M. They have loads of great print design t-shirts. So please use our link. It is intotheam.com/LFN-TEE3, so T3, and purchase our new collaboration t-shirt with Into the AM and shop during their 4th of July sale, where all items are up to 60% off site-wide. So you can get 60% off things in their sale in general, but also why not check out our t-shirt if you think it looks cool? It's a way you can support LFN. And in the future, this is a style, and we did it with Counter-Strike too, that we want to do in the future, where we have a shirt where it can be just a cool shirt in general, but it's almost like there's an Easter egg element that celebrates something about esports or a team or a tournament or something like that. So we're mixing in a bit of it, and over time we want to do more and more of these collaborations to get some cool apparel out there. And Into the M's been one of the best companies we've worked with, so check it out and get up to 60% off with their 4th of July sale. So now let's talk about the other matchups. So let's do the LYON FURIA one reasonably quick here, because here's the key thing for me on this one, Yamato, is I think people are actually looking past how close this matchup could be. Because remember, on the one hand, you've got LYON, right, who, yes, are the champions of NA, and they've won twice now. People are missing that, like, every time they win, bro, they almost, as I said before about big game players, they only power up in the playoffs. Most of the time, they're like bing chilling in the fucking regular split. In fact, against teams that aren't Cloud9, they can even be pushed. It's just when they play Cloud9, they have that weird inspired over blabber thing where they just win every time. Like, I think people are ignoring that LYON aren't some like dominant champion of NA. And then you go look at FURIA. Boys, if you don't follow my other show, like Shut Up and Scale that I do with Peter Dunn, Peter Dunn not only hypes like FURIA in general, because remember, they were the team last year in that play-in that was giving awesome games to everyone. They have some strong, but their jungler, particularly this guy called Tattoo, is a fucking beast, bro. This guy actually is like, I know he's one of those people where I think Peter Dunn thinks he should be like, he should already move to like LCS or LEC or something. Like, this guy's a 20-year-old. He's the one who has like mad swag too. And he's like a really fucking baller ass player. So I actually think this matchup is closer than people think. I think fans are looking at it and going, oh, there'll be LYON auto win. And then LYON plays the winner. I'm interested to see how this one goes, because actually, I think if you look at it, there's some interesting sort of player matchups, the style and strength. Who are you favoring for this one? Where you going, Yamato?
I have to say that FURIA is not a team that I watch super much. Like, I went back and watched some of the BO5s, and we've had people on the show talk about this team too. Yamato talked about them too, because you watch a lot of CBLOL. I do think it's like, based on whenever I see these guys, I think it's very obvious that this is a very highly mechanical team, and I do think that they're currently in a meta where those mechanics are very rewarded. FURIA was a team that underwhelmed. You know, when we saw them internationally the first time, it was like, all right, this is just a mainstay team that is going to show up here every time. But instead, we had like Red Canids and Loud, who played a very, very slow version of like a more macro-oriented almost League of Legends that I don't think could ever do any damage when it came to international play. But here with this team, I do think mechanically they are just insane. They managed to break. I remember there was this announcement because DPM always basically track all the LP of all teams, and this was a team that had just the highest LP out of any team. Obviously, they play on their own server, but it kind of goes to say. When a team has a lot of players that are just insanely high ranked in their top 5, it just speaks to how good they can be mechanically. And I do think this team has a very clear identity in terms of how their mid laner is going to be playing a very roam heavy style with the Rise and the Gallios and the Twisted Fates to just support the vision of the jungler, and also the bot lane that also plays very lane oriented. I think the top lane plays a little bit more in isolation, but I do think that stylistically, this is a series in my mind that will be one-sided either way. Because I think LYON is the type of team that is going to try to take as much air as out of the game as possible and play a very defensive game of League to make FURIA as uncomfortable as possible, where they can't progress the way they are used to in terms of blowing up leads and getting advantages through the things that they commonly do. And then I think that the main thing for, of course, LYON is that they're going to try to find timing fights, maybe 20 minutes into the game, 25 minutes into the game. And I think this for me, why I don't hype LYON and I thought Team Liquid would do better internationally, is because I do think this is a contradiction to what the meta currently is. But I have faith in Inspired, especially because, this is a matchup that maybe they scrimmed already because of the proximity of the regions. This could be a matchup that already from the get-go, this is a matchup that they knew could happen, so they could put the prep work in and cater themselves to the matchup. Inspired is the type of jungler and the type of player to look at a team and recognize what he needs to become and mold himself into that in order to diffuse some of the strengths of the enemy team. And I do think that at this juncture, I do think that LYON will be haven't met a team powerful enough to overwhelm them, that they are forced to take fights that they usually don't want to take. But if FURIA can get that dance going and they can get the snowball going, and especially in the bot lane matchup, if they have advantages in the bot lane matchups that force a reaction from LYON, I think that's when they have them on the ropes and they can easily knock them out. I just think the series will be one-sided either way, and I'm leaning LYON ever so slightly because I just have faith in the prep work of course, LYON, and I think that they had enough time here to prep for this team, and of course Team Secret Wales as well, because they knew about their opposition for many weeks.
No, I'm with you. I am going to side with LYON, but like you, I think what needs to be acknowledged is FURIA got fucking hands in the context relative of this matchup. So I also need big performances from Saint, Berserker. I need these guys to pop off. If they don't, I'm with you. I actually think there's a real world where, for all the laughing about like, lol, TL versus KC, boys, if FURIA fucking beats LYON after what they've done to Cloud9 and all those other tournaments, it's going to be really embarrassing for you too. Like, that's where the egg on your face occurs. With that said, I would assume LYON should be able to get it done. It's just a fun match. I just think it's a way more fun matchup than people realize. So it's actually why, sadly, I always tell people this is why Riot are so annoying, because whenever they do something, they never do it quite the way I wish they would. So when that story famously happened, that Monty had hyped for years, that they were going to combine CB LOL and LCS, we meant actually combine it, not go, well, we're going to sort of combine it. Just kidding, it'll be North and South. It's still separate. And then you only meet for like a play-in for the season. No, like when I watch teams like FURIA, bro, I just wish they were in the LCS. I think that would be dope. I think by the way, Joe said Yoda was almost MVP of the fucking league. Haven't we shown there's talent in South America? There always has been. So I would actually love to, if you could put FURIA into fucking LCS, mate, the league would be so much deeper. Think how dope the playoffs would be. You'd have like 5-6 teams deep. So I don't want to be having to look at fucking Sentinels and go, let me mindfuck myself into believing this is a good team. I want to see teams like this play. So I think that, look, my own problem is it's happening as a first round matchup here. This should be like lower bracket round 1 matchup. That would be where it would be fair to take place, because I do think neither team that wins really has a chance against the winner of BLGT1, but at least it's like a fun matchup in terms of like directly head to head. There should be potentially a fun game. I could even see it being, by the way, Yamato, I'll split the difference. I could even see it being where it's close, but only on the score. Like, if this is 3-2, this is where, like, game 1, it's like LYON just completely outplay them entirely, control the game. Game 2, FURIA just knock them the fuck out. Game 3, LYON back to the... It'd be like one of those ones where, even though it's 3-2, it's like, actually, there's only one game that was, like, contested or some shit like that. So, also could just be 3-0 either way in that regard, too. Right, the last matchup of the whole show and the bracket is obviously the one that I've left till the end, because it's like fucking atomic bomb versus coughing baby, isn't it? It's like, guys, as I said earlier, sadly, Team Secret Wales are no fucking CFO. Like, I can't look at this roster, I can't look at this team and believe they're going to win this match. Like, you could be the most cynical motherfucker of all time, but I had my life. How on earth did they lose this fucking series? Like, surely this is the cleanest 3-0 of all time, Yamato.
This is like what we need to speculate on is what records will be broken here. This is lined up to be the fastest international, because obviously Team Secret Wales punches very fast, very heavy, and I do think that HLE will just get the first hits, and I think the Team Secret Wales will just crash and burn fast. It's a tough matchup to have as the first one, and I'm with you. You know, like the LCP need to win us over again. And when they do, those players will be taken by the LPL anyway. So I feel bad for the circumstance. But when it comes to predictions, there's no room for those type of emotions. Actually, is going to cook them. Get to some damn questions, Thorin.
Here's the problem. I'll just say this to close it. If you saw the episode we did on the last one, the preview, where we had Vestion on, and look, this was a harder one, because in the past he could just pick up fucking CFO, couldn't he? Right? His problem here was he had to find a way to try and hype the players in this team. And here's the problem. The two players he picked to hype were the top laner Pon and the jungler Histo. Right, guys, when they play HLE, they're going to have to play against Zeus and Kanavi, two of the biggest demons and hands gods of those fucking roles. So, unfortunately, I don't see how you ever even get in a game if you're Team Secret Worlds. You are going to get beaten from beginning to end of the game. So, yes, let's just do 1 or 2 questions and we'll just wrap the show. We'll just do like a quick one here. Obviously, we're not doing that much stuff outside of MSI, so we'll just do 1 or 2 of your questions, and then next week maybe we'll do some more. So, if you want to ask questions, at the moment, it's still the old system. Just subscribe to Last Nation Discord. There's a channel in there. It's called SI Questions. And then I just pick out the ones that are fun. So here's a good one. It actually ties in what we talked about before. Bot Pounder 420 says, should Game 5 blind pick be brought back? What do you think? Were you a fan of it back in the day?
I like it a lot, because I do think a very big flaw of Fearless is the fact that one team gets an additional side select. And I do think in Game 5, it's just way too impactful. I think the strength of sides are so apparent in the end that I think that you need to do something to address it. And I do think it would be a cool way of us actually seeing, you know, players at their best champions. It's like the only thing that we are robbed of with Fearless is the fact that we get to see so little of certain players play certain champions. And if in a Game 5 it was Fearless and we got to see all players play their best champions, like that's something that I would enjoy super much. But that's also the romantic view of it. Maybe it would just be metagamed very hard, and you know, we would have just mirror matchups of champions, and it would be like very awkward, because there were occasions where we saw that. Even though it was fun at times with the 2 Shens and the 2 Zeds, I do think that that could be a solution they could deploy for a year and then shift it up. Because I do think what the LPL did was also a cool solution, where you don't have to have a 1v1 at the beginning of every goddamn best of 3 or best of 5, because that kind of got boring fast. But if Silver Scrapes is being played and a BO1, like a 1v1 is deciding who gets side selection in a Game 5, I think that changes the whole kind of dynamic of it. But that was also something that eventually got metagamed, where we just had players stall out and just farm and not lose their tower and just all in you when the flame circle was coming to an end. So it's a very difficult situation to address, but I do think it would be a nice solution for a year at least before it gets boring.
No, I'm with you. The one downside, unfortunately, that I do think League has compared to like Counter-Strike, for example, is in Counter-Strike, there is no inherent advantage to who you are in Game 5. Whereas, as you say, the problem always in League has been the map isn't totally symmetrical. So, for example, famously, certain sides have access to the Dragon Pit more easily. So, as a result, I do think, unfortunately, League's never been able to fix that, being fair. The reason why the blind pit, well, I'm with you. It's hard to know how good it would be because it's so long ago. We're talking like 12 years ago that we were using this now. So it was a much more undeveloped game. With that said, what I always liked about blind pick is one, like you say, you get a chance for mirror matchups. That's cool. You never get that otherwise. Like, oh, don't you want to see like two Jace gods play on Jace? What happens when two good Jace gods play? Do they play really safe? Do they go all out and just brawl? That's kind of fun. And then also the thing I always thought was coolest about it, and by the way, I can tell you my boy Froggen wishes he could get that game back and pick differently, is actually in Game 5, it's kind of like what I said about Fearless. I actually think the best approach in blind pick isn't do what Froggen did, where he like picked some fucking Diana or whatever the fuck it was. You just pick your best champion and you say, you know what, this is the shit I'm the best on. And I'm just, you know, you can pick anything. I'm just going to find a way to make this work. Because what I think of is this: Game 5 is the game that potentially is going to be what the legacy of your player in that series is. So if you go to your strength, some shit that your god's here on, that is fucking dope, I think, if you then carry the series on it. Or even if you lose, you feel like, I was in the game, I had the tools to win it. I think that's kind of cool. I think that does have its own flair. And it's unique to League of Legends. I don't know anything comparable to that in another esport. So I always thought that was the mistake of just throwing it away completely in LCKs. Like, that was a very unique thing that we come up with in League that you didn't have in other games and other MOBAs in theory as well. Okay, one last question we will do is this. I thought this was a fun one to end on. Fede says, with Bin's resurgence, is Scout now the player most hurt by Fearless draft? What do you think?
Oh, damn. Yeah, it's hard to attribute that to like his weakness to Fearless. Because I think it's just the timing is coincidental. Because Scout was not someone that shied away from playing everything. At his high in LNG, he was dominant on Azir, Yone, and Jace. Like those are the three champions that stood out the most, and that is like as much of a spread as you can ask for. He was playing Akali, he was playing anything, and I never saw his champion pool as an issue. It just seemed like the financial problems and the stress of that. Obviously, I'm speculating completely, but it seems like that was, the recipe of his downfall. Staying on the LNG that eventually, lost a lot of the players that were around him and performing, and then moving back to Korea. He never really seemed to find form again because that was the beginning of the downfall. When it comes to people that were hurt the most by Fearless, I just think back to the HLE roster with Peanut and Delight. I think Peanut is probably the player that was hurt the most because obviously Peanut had an amazing career leading up to that year, and they won a first stand the same time and the first initial LCK Cup. But let me tell you, they won that despite of Peanut's performances, because there were Peanut Amumus and Zyras and champions that were flying left and right. They just weren't, he was kind of, the joke of the team in many ways, when he was always a stabilizer in the past, leaning to 3-4 specific champions like Sejuani, Wukong, and Poppy, and just kept them, playing them on repeat, and just did his job extremely well. Him having to put a lot more focus on his individual play was definitely like his downfall in my mind. I think that's the one that stands out the most as the one that was hurt by Fearless the most.
Yeah, I actually have to say, the part that surprises me is the Scout angle. Because again, to me, I always thought Scout had a pretty deep champion pool. Like, if you think historically, yes, I do think people think of him as just a mage player. He always had like the LeBlanc, like a fucking Ari. He could pop some champions out for sure. He always had a deep champion pool. For me, it's sweet. You don't become back-to-back champion, MVP of the LPL, and then a fucking world's finalist MVP in the same career without being able to play a bunch of champions. No, I would go with some more cynical. You named one right there, mate. An obvious one, especially because he still plays, it's Delight. Mate, this guy's whole career might have been different if Fearless didn't exist, because a lot of people actually thought he was like sort of the the sleeper pick for the OP fucking support player. You had the obvious ones, the carriers of the world, etc. But once you got past that, actually Delight was the one people used to sleep on. But it was famously on like 3 champions. If you put him on those 3 champions, he was a fucking demon. But you've seen now when he has to play full BO5s, yeah, he's been exposed a few times. I'll give you one that's a Western player that I think people miss. How about APA? APA's actually had a lot of problems once he's had to go past. When you were in the old meta and he could just draft into like his 3.5 champions or whatever, he could get it done. All he had to do was have the Odd Azir. He was a bit like Western Zeka. He had his 2 champions, then he had the Odd Azir game, and then, you just hoped in the mix of it, one of his champions came back in the meta, like he got a Talia back in the pool or something like that. So you look in the modern day, though, I do think, unfortunately, as his team struggled, he doesn't have that many picks he can go to, mate. He just has to do what he can. So that's why I'm not as surprised, unfortunately, that it went the way it did. I actually hope if he really is just benched permanently, my obvious dream would be, can he just go to another LCS team? Can he go to a Shopify or something like that? Like, I think there's a bunch of teams out there. He's definitely clearly an LCS player. It's just, I don't think he can be like an elite player, and he probably shouldn't be on the teams that go international. But there's still plenty of teams out there I would give that guy a spot. And I do think Failur's killed him, though. Right, that'll be it for this week. We will be back next week. We'll figure out what day to do more of all the wonderful matches at MSI, since we'll have the whole bunch of the matches played. And obviously, we'll be midway through the tournament, so we'll give you some spicy predictions and put our balls out there as usual. See you on the next episode of Summoning Insight.
Yes, sir.